a roll call, please?
Jeannie Engelkmeyer,
Aye. Here.
Sonali Patil,
Here.
Robin Klieg here, Lou Gata,
Here.
Gita Mueller,
Here.
Jeff Bard,
Here by
Jason-
phone.
Jason Tron.
Here. All right, so Jeff is joining us via phone. He's going to make a quick statement about what we're going to be talking about tonight, a little quick summary. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, it may not be real quick, but the plan for tonight is to adopt an educational facilities master plan, which will serve as a blueprint or roadmap for ensuring the district has the facilities necessary over the next 10 years to meet the estimated growth in the number of students and the educational needs for the district. If you recall the other night, the board reached consensus on Monday that we do want to adopt an educational facilities master plan. I would like to first ask at this time whether there's any comments from the board with the affirmative consensus that we adopt the plan tonight.
Everybody hear that?
We're just supposed to say yes, we want to adopt
Yeah,
the
I was
plan.
gonna say, I'm not sure what he's
Yeah.
for.
You're
Okay, I
looking
just
for-
want to make sure. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page before we get started.
that our goal tonight is to adopt one of the two plans.
Yes.
presented.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I
So a
had-
couple
I just
more
had one-
things.
I have one quick comment.
Uh,
Just the, in adopting the plan, well, I guess that would come first before we decide to
Right.
adopt a question.
Right. First, there's no question if there's no plan.
Correct.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay. So the educational facilities master plan, and I'm doing this to the board, but also for the public, is similar to adoption of a strategic plan in that it's going to guide the district as we work to accommodate our facilities needs and address space constraints in the existing buildings. Unlike the strategic plan, we cannot guarantee that all of the items in the educational facilities master plan will be adopted because much of the work requires additional funds that the district currently doesn't have. The board also reached consensus last Monday night that we would seek those funds by putting a referendum question on the ballot in April, and we'll discuss that after we discuss the educational facilities master plan. Approval of the funds by the voters through a referendum will still require board approval for expenditure of the money to implement the educational facilities master plan. So, still decided after approval of an educational facilities master plan, when the funds are available, would be the order of phasing of the components. For tonight, I'm going to recap how we got to this point for the public, and then we will start with public comments. Then Nick will provide a summary of the options. Then we will go to public comments, and then I'll ask for thoughts and discussion from individual board members. If the board is ready to take action, then the board member can make a motion, which would require a second, and then there will be discussion on the motion and any amendments, and then a roll call vote, followed on the amendments, followed by the made motion. Does anyone have any questions about the process at this time?
Nope.
Okay. So for those in the audience that may be hearing about this work for the first time and the decision being considered by the board tonight, I'll just continue with a recap. We've discussed the educational facilities master plan to address the school district's increasing enrollment and building space constraints on numerous occasions and provided many opportunities for public comment. In order to address the increasing enrollment and space constraints in our schools, the board hired DLR Group last spring to evaluate our facilities and develop solutions going forward. A review of our buildings and space utilization was presented in a community meeting on June 2nd of 2016. A committee of staff, parents, and community members worked to develop information on building needs, and options were presented in a special board meeting at Town Line Elementary on October 19th. Building options were presented at that meeting for feedback and further development. At the meeting in October, small breakout groups were set up in the gym to answer questions and provide additional information about specific options. In November, the board had a telephone survey and online survey conducted to obtain further feedback from the community. The results of the survey were presented to the board at the November 14th meeting, and the results are also available online. Following the feedback received, the core team met and further refined their work to present two options for the Educational Facilities Master Plan that were presented to the school board on December 5th. Questions were received from the public at that meeting. At the school board meeting on December 12th, the school board discussed the options presented as part of the Educational Facilities Master Plan, and comments were received during the public comment period. At the regular scheduled board meeting last Monday night, comments were also received and the board discussed the plan as well. And at a joint public meeting last night with the Park District Board of Commissioners, we asked for public comment regarding the proposed joint kindergarten center at the Sullivan Center and provided a description of that project. Tonight, we're going to have discussion on the Educational Facilities Master Plan and look to take action. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Superintendent Brown to describe the contents of the two plans, of the two options.
Thank you. We have two plans. First, I want to review that all the options address our Series C growth projections, provide PE space, music space, cafeteria space, 21st century media renovations, STEM renovations and additions, address the health, life, safety items, code required, provide some space for potential program expansions for school dual language and possibly relocating the LOP middle school program to better fit those needs. So all of the options have been reviewed and cover those areas. There are two options. One is referred to as option A. That is the option that recommends the purchase of acreage across from Elementary South and to build a new Elementary South, grades 1 through 5, and then relocate the School of Dual Language out of the Town Line building to the existing Elementary South building and relocate the EC Pre-K from the Lincoln Center to the existing Elementary South building. All other buildings would get additions and renovations to help bring them up to meet enrollment needs or to satisfy the need for STEM additions and 21st century. Middle School North and Middle School South both have some needs there. Middle School North, classroom space, PE space, and some other space with some renovations. Middle South has some program space and cafeteria space needed in a classroom or two. So the new elementary would go. Each of the elementaries also would have some addition work to it, being some renovation or addition to it for STEM or large group instruction areas or some specific programming areas for students. And that particular, all of that work encompasses the needed space for our projected growth. And what it does is it also has a kindergarten center at the Sullivan Park District building. And so all the elementary kindergarten students, excluding the School of Dual Language, would be located to the kindergarten center. And that is roughly 36,000 square feet of space. And it would provide complete programming, PE, kindergarten, art, music, all that is offered in the buildings. The dual language program stays with the School of Dual Language because that's when we actually begin the dual language programming there, and it can be, should remain with that particular program. That is option A in a nutshell, that it's really a new building and some additions and renovations that's needed for growth and a kindergarten center. Option B addresses the same concerns, but in a slightly different way. Option B has the kindergarten center with the same, moving all kindergarten except dual language to that location. potentially relocating EC Pre-K from Lincoln to some additions at Elementary North. Middle School South and Middle School North have very similar additions and renovations as in option A, and it is to address the need for space, PE space and programming space, cafeteria space. But instead of a new building on the 11 acres, the additional space needed for our growth and new students coming in is resolved through additions onto the buildings. So in option B, there are more classrooms added onto Elementary South, Town Line, and Elementary North as in opposition to A, which was a new building. We do all the additions onto the existing buildings. That is the significant difference between the two in what is presented to the board for consideration. STEM renovations and additions are in both options in the buildings. Originally, it was recommended to have in option B 2 standalone, but that has been revised to provide STEM programming added to the building within the building for better programming needs. There is a slight difference in the costs. I say slight, it's actually larger when I'm not writing the check, so it's millions of dollars difference. The original estimates for option B were $54,800,000. That has been revised since Monday's meeting. We have taken into account an adjustment in the amount for the STEM standalone centers being removed and adding into the buildings the STEM. The added into the building STEM is slightly less expensive, and that put us into a $52 million range. The new option B estimate is $52,859,136 total package for the kindergarten center, all the additions and renovations. The option A cost is $63,242,536 and stayed the same as there were no adjustments from the last presentation or the last board meeting to that particular option. Again, all the options provide space for growth, provide space for programming, and provide a kindergarten center for all kindergartners except for the School of Dual Language. And any more information you'd like? It was just a recap, but
Yeah.
I don't have any more, other than to say that it's important to note that this is a 10-year master plan, so it's not just to handle the capacity needs. It also is addressing a lot of the things that we have in our strategic plan. So if, I think everyone needs to understand that we're doing more than just solving capacity needs with these 10-year master plans.
There was also some updated information from the last board meeting to this that I'd just like to review for folks. I just wanted to review the main concepts of both. Option A being a addition of a kindergarten center and a new building, and that was the recommended option from the core team. Option B was kindergarten center and then additions and renovations to the buildings. As you said, it solves programming needs, supports a strategic plan. During the last board meeting, there were some conversations. One was asking the question about utilities, so I just wanted to share with the board how we came up with the estimated utility cost for a new building. The current Elementary South building is about 75,000 square feet. The new proposed building is around 77,000 square feet, 78,000 square feet. The current cost for the utilities at Elementary South is $135,700. I took 90% of that to give the number 122,130, and I used 90% due to a new building would run more efficiently and have newer upgrades. If a good estimate would be, as the building gets older, you might be pushing up into the 130 range, and that, of course, that all is dependent on utility costs as they fluctuate. Elementary South building current does not have natural gas, so I used the same as if we built the new building, didn't have natural gas. As a comparison, this was not used in the calculations for what we thought, but just as a comparison for folks to know, Town Line is a multi-story building with 139,000 square feet. It does use some natural gas. Its total costs each year for utilities is $177,000. And that a multi-story building sometimes can be more costly to heat and cool the different levels depending on how that's dialed in. But just for a comparison, you're looking at something with roughly 70,000 or 100,000 more square feet, and you're still under the 200,000 range. So I'm comfortable with a estimate between 122 and 130 for utilities. Also, just to review, there were some questions on the staffing, and staffing's a difficult one. We can take 700 students, divide it by 25, and we know we're going to end up with roughly about 29 general ed classrooms, depending on how the students are distributed. It could be less if they are distributed in a building in which they could be absorbed into a classroom. Right now, that would be difficult since we're full. Or it could be more if they're sprinkled out all over the place and just get to that number where you need to add a teacher. But roughly, it's 29 teachers for general ed. You would also need your speech, social work, ELL programming. And it's hard to estimate those because, again, depending on where they fall determines the programming. But you could look at a percentage. We run 14% for special ed. What's 14% of 700? And that might be an estimate of what we need. We did give a price point for both option A and option B previously in December. The question was asked at the last board meeting. There seemed to be a significant difference between the two. I wanted to double check because I wasn't completely comfortable with the numbers that I was looking at that point. Option A has not been adjusted. We think that if you're going to do a building, it's going to be very similar to the staffing needs of dual language. You have a principal, you have a custodian, you have so we used that as the model and came up with about 507,000. Option B, the previous option was a little low. I think I was about 100,000 low in my estimates. I did remove the $30,000 that was built into it for a STEM person to help manage that, since those are being added into the buildings now. But I do believe that with the expected growth, if you do additions on the building, you will need an assistant principal. I don't know where, but I would think you would need an assistant principal depending on how the enrollment grows. If we look at our existing buildings that are around 500, there's an assistant with them, that may be the case. So I added that back in at about 90,000. We believe there'd be a custodian needed in there, but roughly there was about $100,000. We added in for lunch recess, 5. If you have a building of 500, you roughly have 5 lunch recess, and I believe I had omitted that in the previous estimates. Ultimately, what happens, the variance came out off the new estimates of about 251,376. So I'd be comfortable if you were asking what's the difference between the two in staffing. It's going to run somewhere between 200 to 300,000, a conservative estimate. In how that works. So hopefully that provides a little more insight for you on some of those numbers. We checked on the impact fees for the district and had forwarded that out, and I'm realizing I may not have printed that out for us. Would you share that with you?
Sure. We're looking at the 3 developments, Pulte Homes in Cuneo, Riviera Estates and Woodland Chase, at approximate value of around $56.1 million in total new growth. Our current tax rate of 4.033085. We're looking at taxes on the new growth. This is without any increase in our tax rate, which we're looking at doing in the spring, of about $226,000 in new tax dollars, and that's not subject to the new increased CPI, which we will find out next week, how that will affect our tax dollars next year, as well as any additional growth due to the fact that it is new growth. We aren't limited to CPI on the new growth. And then the impact fees from Cuneo, $436,273, Melody Farms, $168,948. And Woodland Chase, $167,959, and those total up to $773,180.
And I believe those had been emailed to you yesterday. There was another item that came up in the impact fees in the apartment complex that is in a TIF district. The question was, do we get dollars per students? We do get the equivalent dollars that we spend per student that moves in. The comment came up that somebody thought that was not annually. That is annually. There is a process and a timeline in which the district has to report. We have these students coming in, and so that would then generate. But each year, if you have a student move in second grade and they're through fifth grade, we would get those dollars each year for those 3 years they were there. So just wanted to make sure that was clear, that it's not a one-time, it's each year that they're there.
Who do we get that from? From the developer?
It is from the developer. I don't know if we report it to the village or we report it to the developer at this point, but the developer, the person that owns the property, puts that money towards us. I think that might be put into some sort of a trust or some form of money that is available to us when we need it. I think those were the pieces that were updated for the board from Monday night's conversations.
Can I ask a few questions about some of the stuff you've
Yeah.
done in the last few minutes? The extra operating costs, regardless of which plan you go with, is it realistic or is it common practice that a STEM facility, whether it's in a building or standalone, does not have a separate teacher or administrator running just that STEM lab who stays in that spot all day long as kids come through?
For an elementary district, if the STEM facility is available within the building, that would be managed, check out and assignments through the office, the principal, whatever. There wouldn't necessarily be an assigned administrator just for that space, much like a large group instruction room
Right.
would be assigned in and out. If it were a standalone, that's where we had built in a little bit of money for some, but if it were a standalone, you might have what I call a curator, somebody that would organize
Right.
and coordinate those things, but it would be within each building with existing.
I guess I'm just picturing it to be a lot of work for a teacher to be doing the regular classroom schedule and then also have to pop into the lab and get that set up and ready for the next lesson, and all in these 40-minute periods. It seems like a lot.
I think, I agree. I mean, it's a lot of work for them right now. I think it would be. What's nice is it gives you a space when you set things up, like we said the other day, you have some longevity of that. Some of that's how they coordinate within the building and what support they might have in setting those up. But
And it actually
Okay.
can be less work for the teacher because you've got your STEM room or STEAM room set up with your materials so that you're not duplicating every day, taking it down, putting it up, or trying to work around it. It's in the classroom, it's there, and it's,
they're creating those environments, the activities now, and they would with that. That doesn't mean to say that in the future, if this were to be part of what we had, that at some point an instructional assistant might not be assigned to go in and set some things up to come back and be checked by the teacher and do some of that prep work. But right now, I have not built a staff member in
Okay.
for that at each building.
Okay, because, I mean, I know this part of it isn't board work, but I'm just sort of in my head trying to picture, unless a teacher has that space assigned to them all day long, they would have to rotate out of there somehow and get their stuff out of the way for the next group. Anyway,
Yeah, it was similar to a computer lab or how they use computers. There would be a sign up, sign in, and they would coordinate within the building what grades or what teachers are using it, and they would coordinate that pretty well.
okay. My other question is, I thought Jason Lemke was going to be here tonight, so I don't know if you're going to be able to answer this. When we were talking Monday night, the idea for the people that liked option B, the idea was, we like option B, but let's put STEM at each building instead of these standalone facilities, which sounded like a pretty decent compromise. Excuse me. Although as I'm looking at it, and I didn't think to ask this in the spur of the moment Monday, but there are already lots of additions onto the buildings on option B. If you also have to build the equivalent of like 2 classrooms, Jason said a STEM lab is about 2 classrooms worth of space. If you also have to put that onto these additions, I'm not picturing all of these spots to have room for another addition on top of these additions.
Townline and Elementary South are the only ones that don't have that readily space, because if you look
So
at
then
the
how do we
difference,
address those buildings?
well, that's where we talked about possibly the addition on South, make that a 2-story. So then now you've got some space. You got, instead of however many classrooms are there, you double that space. Now you got, the other question was Townline. Can that be done?
I the team had similar concerns when we were looking at, and I've done the same as you did. I went back and looked at these. And so here's my initial thoughts in looking at these. You do have a courtyard within the middle of South that potentially could have an addition somehow in there, potentially. So if you want, you could go up on the second story, or you could utilize that space in there somehow. And depending on how the actual design phase comes out for this space, I would anticipate you would have the addition around the back as it makes sense that would be the direction that it would happen. But there's potential, I think, within that courtyard that we put.
This little one?
No, the right in the center. It's like the U.
Oh, that's a courtyard?
Yeah, the old courtyard is going to be captured for storage,
closed off, yeah.
but where the portable is now, there's a.
Okay.
So I believe there could potentially be space in there to
'Cause
add
on this
something.
plan, that's put in as a 21st century media room. So then what do we do? Get rid of that?
The 21st century media room is the library.
It's the library, so that's the existing space.
If you look in the very center, you see like 3 little dots that look
This?
like
Yes.
trees. Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I think we could.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think we could accommodate there. When I went back and revisited for Town Line, it talks about a 2-story addition, the first level being support and the second level being classrooms. I believe you could do a 3rd level, and that could be where the STEM center is. It's a 3-story building
Right,
now.
again, but he said that increases your utility costs, and
Correct.
then I'm looking at Middle North, and I'm going, I don't know where that's going on Middle North. I mean, I'm just.
Middle
going
North
like-
doesn't change because from Plan A to Plan B, it's the same.
But it didn't have,
But where you would have
STEM?
put it in Plan A, you're now putting it in Plan B. So the space that you're going to use in Plan A to put in the STEM, you're now going to use that same space in Plan B. That same space was not being used for something different in Plan B. It just wasn't being used for STEM. So that's why the middle schools were kind of a wash, because they were taking some space in the middle schools, converting it to STEM in Plan A, and in Plan B, they just weren't converting them to STEM. So that space is still available to do what they would have done in Plan A.
Do you think when Jason gave us the estimate of the cost of the STEM centers as additions on Plan B, he was considering like doing a 3rd level on, like, I just wonder how he came up with those numbers.
I did not ask him. What I asked him, I was able to talk to him today. He subtracted out the 6.2, which was the standalone, and then added in the estimated cost for STEM from Plan A. So whatever was in Plan A, he used the same dollars and just added those in and took out the 6.2 as the way to conduct that. So whatever dollars would have been assigned to Elementary South for STEM and Plan A, would be assigned to South for.
Plus,
for
I think
Plan
he added a little, I think the numbers came out to be a little bit more too than that, so.
There's a little fudge factor in there probably.
Yeah, to account for possibly having to go up a level or something like that, because we dropped the price in Plan B by 2,000, but the difference, or 2 million. By 2 million by putting it in each building, but the difference between, if you added up all the STEM costs between A and B, was roughly 3 million. So basically, we kept 1 million to make those accommodations that you're talking about in order to make it available in all the buildings.
But to your question, I don't know, and I don't recall him saying that going up would be more expensive, but I don't know if he envisioned that when he was doing the dollars, that a 3rd floor could be a
Right,
little bit
right.
more expensive than a ground floor.
right.
And that if you were to do it on the ground floor, if you're adding classrooms at the end, but you were to add onto that again, you do, if that were to be the case, you do move more into that playground area, if that's where to be added. I don't know that there's enough room at the end before Aspen Drive, but when I looked at it today, my thought would be you would go to the 3rd floor, and that's where you would build it for just efficiency of space.
There is, it is a very good point. We know it works in, 'cause all the STEM centers. But it is concerning. We know it works in this building, we don't know how it's going to work in the 2 largest buildings. That is a concern. That is not. That's gonna. So it's not like, okay, we have a lot of space here in one of the smaller buildings, we could probably make it work. I mean, now you're talking about capacity of being 4,000. Elementary South will be,
Jeff, you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
we're, at 800 already almost. So those are quite large STEM centers, honestly, that we're not exactly building yet. But
And the reason I looked at the courtyard, another, just to kind of, the reason I looked at the courtyard itself is if you looked at north and A, that little sort of courtyard, that was where the original thought was. So that if they could fit it in elementary north in a similar space, they probably could then there. But,
it's a big if.
Right.
Yeah, but that was the question that I had posed to Jeff, or to Jason on Monday, was exactly that. Can it be done? Can we do in B what we had proposed in A in terms of having the STEM in each building, knowing that north is taking, or elementary north is the same, that there's no difference there. Aspen's the same, the two middle schools are the same. The only difference was Town Line and Elementary
I
South.
believe it can be done.
And from what Jason was saying is it can be done. And he came back with an estimated cost of actually saving us $2 million.
It can be
So-
done,
It
but
can be
what are
done,
we
of
gonna
course.
give up? I mean, we've already shrunk parking spaces, playground space, what are we gonna give up? Because
And-
when I asked him, why did the core team prefer A over B? The first answer out of his mouth amongst two other answers was the additions in option B make you pretty much landlocked so that there's not gonna be flexibility going forward if one school becomes undersized and one becomes oversized, and it'll require boundary changes and this and that. So I'm going, him saying it can be done, well, I mean, we can do a lot of things with a certain amount of money, but what are we gonna have to give up for it?
And we're
What
concerned
Nick is saying is, it doesn't sound like we have to give up anything, because one of the two possibilities is to go up. That's not taking away anything that's already there.
As long as that's what can be done.
You can go if you can add a two-story to the end of Town Line and it's a three-story building, why can't you go three? I guess I don't see the complication
don't
There's
there.
just some uncertainty.
I don't see either, but I don't have a guarantee. There's no approval of village permits.
None of this has that.
Of course, but there's certain things that were part of a plan, and I would assume that an architect researched that prior to coming up with these plans, whereas this is something we've thrown in the last 48 hours. I don't know.
And we're concerned about green space, and we're talking about the courtyards and taking away space from there, and it just seems that we've had options, and we have an option that provides the flexibility and is not piecemeal together and trying to change things around now. I don't know.
How is it piecemeal?
Because it just seems like we're going back in now and trying to add on the STEM centers and talking about going up and talking about doing things that don't seem necessarily necessary when we have an option that has everything laid out for us already.
It removes the difference between A and B in terms of the STEM. That was one of the big difference was, okay, in B, you had the STEM in a standalone building. There were some disadvantages to that.
Of course, each plan has disadvantages.
And so to try to mitigate that, that was one of the options that we had discussed. Jason didn't seem to have any issue about, oh, wait, you're throwing me a big curveball, I can't do that. Seems like, yeah, it's two classrooms that they can add to the Town Line and Elementary South. I didn't think it was, and I didn't see from him that was going to be a big issue. He came back and gave an estimate, which, okay, he added a little bit more money than just doing it as it would have been done in A. So it gave us extra, buffer zone in terms of what needs to be done to add it. So it's not like, oh, we're trying to shoehorn something in at the last minute. There's room. That's one of the reasons why we asked, can we go up? yes, we can go up.
That's
If
why
we
I
can't go
just-
up, then yeah, then you're right. Then now we're looking at giving something up. But if we're able to go up, then we're really not giving anything up.
So here's the next potential problem out of it, though. If you've got a building like Town Line, and option B will become something probably roughly over 1,000 kids, 1,100 kids, will they be served in an equitable manner by a same-size STEM lab as a building that has 500 kids? Or are those kids only going to get half as much access to the STEM lab as every other kid? And if that's the case, then what you need to do is double the size of the STEM lab at Town Line, and now you need even more space added on. Like, it's not just equal and equitable are two different things. Equal is the same size STEM lab at every building, but that's not equitable if the students are not getting the same amount of access to it.
The uncertainty in the two largest.
And
It is uncertain.
my assumption is they would, when the design time comes in, they would right size the STEM lab for
Yeah,
what's
but that could
needed.
change the cost. I mean, we don't know. Like, that's,
And that's where it seems that we're trying to piecemeal it together in a sense, as opposed to a design that has the equitable layout with the flexibility of all of our schools for all of our future growth and potential.
But the
with
numbers that came
curriculum.
back for the estimate, I again would assume that would be right sized. So everything that is in the master plan is done with all this in mind.
I think
So
it's
I
a
don't
huge
think-
assumption to assume that they right-sized the STEM labs as additions at each building in option B.
So Jason has been all about right-sizing, designing things for the capacity and utilize the space. So I don't think he would come back and tell us that we can put them on all of these buildings, but, oh, you're gonna have one that's the size of a closet. I'm sure he's designed it knowing that we want to accommodate them in each of the buildings. So I don't think we should assume that he didn't do that, because all along he's been about making sure things are designed to accommodate the number of students and give the space that's necessary.
Okay, I mean, I guess that's, why God made chocolate and vanilla. I just think that's a huge assumption. I think assuming that Jason, I think he's an amazing architect, and I think DLR has been nothing but professional, but I think assuming that he has thought through the fact that each student might have less access to that STEM lab by making each one of them the same exact size, I just don't know that I have any confirmation other than people assuming, and we know what happens when we assume. I have no confirmation that he said he considered that, yes, if we do option B with the STEM lab at each building, it's gonna have to be bigger at Town Line and bigger at Elementary South and not as big at Elementary North and Aspen, and that's a huge assumption.
Can't you make that same assumption for A, though? North is going to be bigger than Aspen, and the new South is going to be bigger, so if we're getting new STEM centers in each one of those buildings,
But that's been.
But
built-
option
that's been
B
built
doesn't-
knowing what.
But in
the
option
capacity
A,
of the
Town Line
school is
doesn't
gonna
become an
be.
1,100 student school.
right?
It's not, so it was based upon the population at each building,
Right.
whereas in
So-
option B, the population increases massively at some of these
Exactly,
buildings.
so the other buildings are taken care of, so the only one that we're concerned about is Town Line and South. Okay, so if you look at the cost difference, he didn't just say, okay, what was the cost to do the STEM center at Town Line and move that over? There's additional cost to that. To me, that's taking into account the extra size of that school now. So
Well,
it's
and
not
it
just
would
like, I,
just be
he
Town
he
Line
didn't
and
just take
South
two
is
pieces
pretty
of puzzles and
similar.
just,
In both
South is
plans.
just 674 at 2026.
So it's really
So
just
South
Town
goes
Line.
down significantly on the number. It's a smaller school than
In
it is
A.
right now.
A.
No, even in
No,
B. In
B.
all schools, it goes down because you're moving the kids out,
The kindergarten.
Oh,
the kindergarten
The
kids out.
numbers are
So
pretty similar for South and A and B. I think
Yeah.
Town Line is the one that.
the Town Line is the
an
only
issue.
one. It's 647 to 674. That's the projected numbers on enrollments that stays at South. So that number is not changing a whole lot. That's 30 kids change. That's it.
I'm not gonna repeat
I'd like-
myself. I think you all get my concern.
I
Are
can,
you-
I'd like to bring up, I guess, a separate issue.
hold on one second.
Okay.
So we were at Nick giving us a summary and then we kind of
Yes, sorry.
jumped
We're
into,
not into the.
we jumped into the discussion item 1 already. So I think, I want to just go back to what Nick is saying, and if anybody has any questions about the additional information that we got from Nick in terms of the cost, the tax, the impact fees, stuff like that. I'm going to start, I have a couple of questions on impact fees. Do we get those as the buildings are built? Is that correct?
As the homes are built, they would send us as each lot is.
And what can we use those impact fees for?
We can use them towards the school of that attendance area. For any,
For building purposes,
Purpose, yeah,
for
building
maintenance,
yeah, building and maintenance purpose.
only for buildings? I mean, we can't use it for operationally, for example.
We can use it for operational expenses under our operations. So custodial, maintenance staff, if we need a vehicle for that building equipment.
So it can just accumulate in that account and then we can say,
Use
okay,
it for our operating.
now we can,
expenses.
or
Can
we
we
can,
move it? Sorry.
It needs
Jump
to
in.
go towards the attendance center of where those kids
No,
are.
no, no.
going.
I mean, I understand,
move
but
it
like
to-
if I move them into operational, right? And then later I want to use it for, say, capital, because I needed to do something and I needed to move the money. We can move money from our funds, right, to one to another.
Well, the board would need to approve that, but I don't see a problem utilizing it for the purpose it's intended for, which is for the operations of the building where students go. We're not talking about a ton of money and have enough operations expenses at that building.
can we use it for some of the construction or some of the renovation?
I don't believe we can use
So they only go towards operation to the attendance school, right?
yet to the school of attendance where, I mean, if half a neighborhood went to one school and half a neighborhood went to the other, we would divvy it up as such.
And they come as the lot is built, so they send it to us at the end of the year that they sold.
During the year, we get checks. We get checks now for Aspen Point if they build a new house, or if they're building a new house in Gregg as that new neighborhood is developed on Lake Charles. We get a check every time they permit.
Okay, so every time the permit goes out, we get a
Every time the
check.
permit process starts, the developer
That's a
pays
check,
their-
okay.
All right, another question I have on the utility cost estimate. So what you sent out, Nick, had a number, 177,000.
Mhm.
Is that,
That's town line.
that's town line, that's not the cost to run the new building?
No, the cost to run the new building was estimated off of the cost to run elementary south, since it'd be similar square footage.
Okay.
South's at 135,700. I took 90%, made it 122, believing it would be a more efficient building.
Okay.
But I would say an estimate would be that 122 to 130. I put in town line to show you a cost for a building that's almost 100,000 square feet more, multi-story. It runs at 177,000 roughly at this time.
So if we include the utilities with the staffing difference, option B is about 380,000 more a year, roughly.
Probably.
Call it 400 and,
Option A.
option A is,
More
with the new building, option A would cost about 400,000 more a year to run. That's an annual expense that's recurring and continues.
Wait, I'm sorry, I missed something. What were the increased utility costs for the additions on option B? We don't have that.
No, I didn't calculate.
I mean, obviously, square
Right,
footage.
it's gonna go
has-
up,
And also
right,
it increased operational.
Right, I probably could quickly take how many classrooms I have at town line, what it costs, divide it and say for each new building.
Right.
I didn't do that, I just did it as if we had a new.
But we know
this.
there will be increased
It-
utility
there would-
costs.
But it
The
doesn't-
thing with this, if you do additions, if you do new
Right.
building, or if you did portables.
Right,
You're gonna have an increased utility costs, increased staffing costs. They will probably be similar. There will be some differences because of how you answer it. That was one of the benefits of B, was it is a more efficient use of space in that regard. But then you just have to weigh which one you think then is the better use of the space. I did, if I could insert real quick, while you were talking about the question on STEM, I went back to the presentation on December 5th that was presented, and it did have some itemized areas in the presentation for how dollars were assigned to the buildings. And in that presentation, for the allocation of dollars for STEM in A, the elementaries each had $650,000 allocated to them to create that space. In those, even in that one, there is differences within the number of students within there, but an equal dollar was used in the estimate of the creation of that space. I don't know that that indicates necessarily that's how it actually get distributed and when you get into the design piece or if you had to know. But that was, if I'm going off, if I have to make assumptions as I can't get a hold of Jason right now, he allocated the equal dollars, that would create equal size spaces, I believe. It does generate the amount of dollars he thinks are needed for STEM, and he may have done that just to make it an easier calculation, but I don't know.
Okay, any other questions for Nick on the information that was presented?
Just wanted to correct one thing. The impact fees can be used towards the building capital improvement.
So
So we can do it
renovations,
For capital too.
Yeah.
very good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
All right, if there's no other questions for the information that Nick have, I guess now we're on to public comment. Anyone from the public want to comment? Anyone? Jeff, anyone there? No? All right. Okay. So now we'll move on to our discussion, which is back to discussion of the educational facility master plan options. We've had a long discussion on Monday night about these two options. I think we've had a lot to think about in the last couple of days also. So I guess I'll open it up for any one that wants to start. So this is the discussion. There's no motion yet, so we haven't.
Right.
We're not discussing a specific motion. We're just discussing the two options that are in front of us. That
One thing is, I can hear everybody really well, but when Jeannie speaks, I had difficulty hearing her, so if she could just either try to speak louder or try to speak closer to the microphone, that would be great.
Okay.
she said, okay.
Yeah, I heard that.
All right.
Good.
Anyone to start?
Sure. Just to quickly reiterate what I was saying on Monday. The work of the court team was phenomenal, and like I said, the fact that we're in this position is a proud thing. The aggressive nature of this plan and MLab. It's just an amazing thing. So I said that, so I'm going to restate. Both of the plans obviously work in the capacities that we need to, and I said that originally the STEM labs, option A being in every school was big. I didn't necessarily want to give up all of the fields that option A would come with, the 11 years. And like I said, after giving it hundreds and hundreds of hours of thought, looking to the core team who, again, I'll say, work that they did in the thousands of hours and recommendations from people that I firmly know that their passion is great as mine. I said before, Robert Collins, Martin, England, everybody else. And once they said that plans were there, that unanimous decision. I just wanted to reiterate, that's what I said on Monday. And other things, listening to some of the other comments that have happened about, because there is obviously disadvantages to both. There's both. But one thing that I heard that was concerning to me is that there was a lot of talk between a lot of, of board members that, option B also, they won't affect moving students as much or boundary issues. And I just want to say that that truly cannot be reason for picking a plan. And I'll just backtrack a couple of years ago that, you know, when we really realized this problem was happening, the classrooms of 30, and we were late to the game on that. Then last year, talking about what are we going to do, what's happening in elementary south. At that time, we said, and even administration's recommendation was the building is really becoming unmanageable, that number of students. And we didn't make any action on that to readjust any. Now we're talking about Town Line going to 1,100 students in that option, which is, again, is just a massive number. And if it was unmanageable here, it seems like it would be unmanageable now. But my point being is, one of the main reasons is to not draw boundaries. It's a probable, if not a very good chance, because we are at Series C, we will have to be adjusting a boundary this year. Unless we're going to put up another portable before the educational master facility plans comes into action. We haven't even addressed the educational minor facility plan. It's been 1.5 to 2 years, and we still haven't fixed the problem in Elementary South. And another year is going to happen of Series C aggressive growth. So, my fellow board members, if that is a main reason for option B, that we won't have to move boundaries, please rethink that, because chances are probable, if not very certain, we will have to move a boundary this year. So that was concerning to me.
Option B actually makes it more likely.
Yeah, I thought option A was the one.
It was
Yeah. A is
No,
the
I
one
think
that
it was
we felt
it
like-
was the opposite, because the number of students going and in the different areas would be going to only it gave less flexibility of where you'd be.
Right.
So
Yeah, so
I
then,
felt like A
so I
was-
think your argument of, you're saying that to not want to move kids would for.
I'm saying no part of boundaries.
You think
This
that
is all I
should be
should
a
say.
criteria?
No part of boundary movement should be in anybody's decision.
And on Monday's discussion, it was A that had less
Probability. right.
probability of moving kids or changing the boundaries because of the
Right.
increase in size and the more flexibility use of
All I'm
the,
saying is that should not be a criteria.
so it was A.
That's all I'm
So
saying.
I think you just placed it on the
Right.
wrong option
Yeah.
there.
But he doesn't want us to be afraid to move boundaries.
Correct.
Yes, you cannot.
Yeah.
If
So
I-
that-
yeah,
so
if
that
I-
was-
If I got that mixed up, fine, but I'm saying that we still haven't, you know, like I said, if that's a major criteria. Should be.
I wanted to just say, first of all, I echo what Lou was saying, that I do think this is a proud problem to have. I'll use your words. I completely agree. I think that both plans are great for our district and will only help with the attractiveness of the district and our home values. So it's all good. They both solve the problem. After the last meeting, I listened to everybody, and everybody had some really great comments, and the core team had some good information. And one of the things that kept getting talked about, but it was more in general terms, was the traffic flow issue at Aspen. So I wanted to try to put some numbers to that problem. Give me, I have a little bit of a cold. So what I did is I took this, our 11 by 17 sheet, and I looked at the projected enrollment numbers that were given for each school. And I looked at option A, and I looked at the North Campus under option A, and I looked at the South Campus under option A. I did the same thing for option B, and it kind of surprised me how significant the difference was in terms of the numbers. If you look at option A, and again, this is projected enrollment for 2026, so it's like the worst case scenario. But if you look at option A, the North Campus is going to have 2,015 kids. The South Campus is going to have 3,054. 1,039 more kids will be going into that South Campus than will be in the North Campus. And to give you an idea, the current situation, so if we look at what's currently going on at South, it's 2006 kids. So again, it's over 1,000 more kids going into the South Campus than what's currently happening. And I know we're talking about, working with the village and trying to figure out staggered start times and, something that we can do. But again, that number is so significant, it really popped out at me. If you look at option B, the North Campus is going to have 2351 students, and the South Campus will have 2409. So the South Campus will end up having 58 more kids under option B. So it's a difference between 58 more kids or 100 or 1,039 more kids. So again, I'm just sharing the information with you because I was sort of shocked when I actually did the numbers.
Yeah, I agree with that. The difference between north and south, or A and B, is there's 5. The way I calculate it is I just took the difference at the South Campus, and with option A, there will be 535 more students on the south side than in option B. So that's the delta between, if we're looking at the difference between A and B, is in A, you've got 535 more kids on the south
Is
side.
that current? Like,
No, that's the 10-year projection, the max.
There's far
2409
more,
versus 3,054, the same
there's far
600.
more overall space. Just talking
Acreage,
traffic,
yeah.
but I mean,
Correct.
there's
So-
far more,
so
far
right-
more space. I mean,
So I think what
again,
Peter's
just
saying is-
dealing with traffic shouldn't be planned.
But-
There is going to be more
1,000 more
students.
kids? You don't think traffic
One of
should
the
be
biggest
something
complaint we
consider in
hear-
the South Campus?
No.
is the traffic.
No,
So that is a big
the
issue.
I think
Space,
it's a
the
huge
space can
issue.
obviously hold the kids.
Correct.
Traffic, you're talking about dropping off and picking up, or people may take the bus. I mean, you can't just say, traffic isn't a reason
Oh, it's a huge
to
reason.
spend the difference. I mean,
Huge
The
reason.
biggest,
that cannot be the
I
deciding
think our first and
factor.
foremost criteria needs to be, what do we want this plan to look like for the student experience? And although the commute is, of course, part of the overall experience, it is not the significant factor in whether they're achieving what we want them to achieve. So
It's the
I do
commute,
think
it's
traffic,
the
I
safety-
totally
the
agree.
safety issue
Totally
behind
agree.
that.
I'm not discounting the traffic problem at all. And actually, one of the questions I had written down for Nick is, do we have a realistic solution to the traffic? I mean, obviously, the increased busing as opposed to walking and driving, but do we have a realistic solution instead of just saying, well, we'll work it out? I mean, staggered start times only work to a point. You can't have kids starting at 11 and ending at 6. I mean,
I think that there are a couple of things the board could consider. And so I'll share some things that if you were to pick either one of these, we have traffic issues north and south campus, either way. And if you pick B, you're going to eat up some of the space on the north campus that's existing. And so if you shrink the available traffic pattern, it can increase the feel of the traffic and safety. On the south side, if you add more students, it's a similar situation. Currently, I've been working with the South Campus Elementary folks. We are working on a plan for Aspen that we want to pilot in March, just before spring break for a few weeks. What we want to do is have it figured out here in the next couple weeks, advertise it a tremendous amount to parents and say, here's what we're trying to do to get you off of Aspen Drive behind the building. Similar to what we did at Middle South. Let that run for the rest of the year, but evaluate it and see if that does help. When you do any work on campus with either one of these, it does open the opportunity to do some big physical work if you needed to change parking lots and things of that sort. Now, the kindergarten situation, my initial thoughts at this point is if you do a kindergarten building, you would want to consider offering transportation to everybody, no matter if they're within the 1.5 or not, potentially because the younger students. What's interesting is the benefit of our campus all being on one spot is wonderful for traffic costs, because everybody comes from buses come here. It's got a lot of benefits, but one of the drawbacks is if you look at Middle South or the proposed kindergarten center, when you overlay the 1.5 mile issue, there aren't any homes near them, so to speak. If you look at a traditional neighborhood school, and you have a 1.5 mile radius, the homes around it. So walking there isn't as necessarily, may not be as big a concern. And I'm using Middle South and the kindergarten, proposed kindergarten as an example. To walk there, you have to cross some major busy streets or high traffic areas, where if it was located in a different location, it may not. So I think that, are there plans that would have to be bless you, there would have to be some conversations about, do you increase the offerings for the kindergarten center transportation to help offset the fact that the little ones probably are not going to be able to walk there, so parents will have to, so you're increasing the number of cars that would need to go. We can change the patterns around Aspen. We think we have a pretty good plan in that work. We're not planning to adjust South right now because of the different start times. We do believe some adjustments in the start times can help the timing of the flow, but we have to be very careful that I don't have a parent waiting 2 hours between one building and the next. They've got to be within some reasonable range to be cognizant and respectful of the families. So those are the things we're working on. That's the most concrete I've got for you right now. I think at Aspen, we have a pretty good plan that what we really want to do is get the cars off of Aspen Drive and back around, and then they'll loop out, and that will help with the flow.
I'm just thinking when each plan has its advantages and disadvantages to the traffic, it just depends sort of on which campus you want to shift it to. So in option B, it increases the traffic on the North Campus over what it is now, especially at Town Line. And if you've ever sat in that Town Line pickup line, it's torture. But at the same token, option A obviously makes the traffic worse on the South Campus, and it's already kind of a nightmare there. So that works for Aspen, and obviously if we were to design a new elementary, we would obviously make a turnaround somewhere around the back.
How you place it
It
can
just
really
still
make
is
a difference.
obviously a lot of cars coming in and out.
With a new building, you have sort of a blank slate. Knowing the traffic
Right,
concerns,
right.
you would design it slightly differently than maybe what we've accomplished at this point. I would just caution it. We have traffic concerns on A and B
Right.
for all campuses. And with our increased projected enrollment, that's going to increase the numbers.
Excuse me.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
I wanted to kind of bring some data this is the data we all have, but whether we go with option A or B, the kindergarten center is given, and that right now the operating costs for it are about $300,000 a year. The new elementary building, if we build it, as Nick said, would be about $122,000 a year. We would have additional costs for Middle South and Middle North utility costs anyway, because those would not have been they are already built in. They are there in both the plans. The thing is, in the impact fees, which we got, this is the impact fees when all of Cuneo is built out, all of Riviera Estates, the 61 houses, and Woodland Chase, assuming they're all coming to us at 57, is only $226,000. That's the number he gave me. Taxes.
773 impact fee.
Impact is-
The 226 is the
missing
annual
Cuneo.
tax.
You're looking at the estimated annual tax.
That's the annual tax.
Increase due to EAP.
Okay,
The impact
so
fee
that's
is
773.
773.
Yeah, 773.
773. Okay. So my concern of one of this is with all the kindergarten and with all the students that are coming in with the new classroom staff and assistants, which are almost 1.6, 1.7 when I round it up to. So there's a lot of costs that we are going to be incurring all the time. Continuous cost. This is every year cost. The students that we are coming from the new houses, I did not count Melody in it because we get paid for whatever we spend on the student. So I would consider that kind of a wash to whatever we did. Most of the growth that we are getting, we are already collecting taxes on those houses. So those are empty nesters leaving or single people living in the apartments, and now they're getting replaced by kids. So we're getting the kids, we've already collected the taxes. So that growth is not bringing in any money. The only money is going to come from this. Riviera Estates and Woodland Chase. Woodland Chase, I think, is even further down. Riviera Estates is going to take a long time to get built out, just seeing what it is. Holte, I've been told once it gets an approval, it'll go fast. I'm just cautious that I'm not going to start getting the money on it really fast. So I just want to be cautious about our outgoing is going to be very, very high in one plan, while our incoming, the taxes that we are going to get in, and we are going to be in red and not knowing what the state is going to throw our way. We should be very conservative with what we are doing with our money, because we are going to be really, really tight on a lot of things. And we won't, we start dipping into we already are going to dip into our funds to make the kindergarten center. And how much more are we going to keep dipping in with all the other things that are coming out is just a big concern for me. And I wanted to share that with everybody. So just those
Yeah,
numbers.
I think that the key point for me on that point is that the annual operating cost, key word there is annual. It repeats. It's over and over, and it's every year we have to spend an additional 380,000, 400,000 a year. That's a lot of money when things could be tight. I mean, if we look at our one-to-one technology, that's $200,000 a year roughly for just the middle school. If we want to extend that, where are we going to come up with that money? Well, if we have to spend an extra 400,000, then maybe we won't be able to do that type of thing. So I agree with Sonali in the sense that, the annual operating cost is a big factor.
And Jason, your number, that 4,000 number, I think is just between option A and option B. It doesn't
Correct. That's
include
not the
the
increase.
expense of Sullivan,
Correct.
which
That-
is another 300.
So that's just the difference.
Yeah.
We're going to have a much bigger increase. So
That's right, and
if we
that's
can
what I said, the
save
utility
400,
costs for other things that are already there,
Yeah.
which no matter what, we have
we
to,
have to pay for
we
it.
have to get the kids in, we have to educate them, we have to have the teachers there. That, the increased salaries and support staff, that has to be there.
But that happens even if we do nothing, even if we don't adopt a.
No, but I
fast
know.
fashion.
Exactly.
I mean, but it is, it is just a concern to me overall, and we
Yeah.
should.
No, it's a
keep it-
concern to me too, but for the people watching out there in TV land that think we're underestimating these costs, because how could you run a kindergarten center on 300,000? It's that we need those teachers whether we build a new building or
Whether they're
not. The
distributed or not.
teachers happen
they're-
whether,
yeah.
because the kids are coming either way.
There will be money brought back in. Bring it.
Well, there'll also be money going out for that.
Because we are spending least money on them.
I don't
the
think we're
numbers.
decided yet, though.
Well, right,
Lincoln
but what I'm
State.
saying is, I mean, ultimately, if you want Lincoln to
If
be
you bring
brought
Lincoln
back, that's
back.
300,000.
I did not calculate, to your
Yeah, I mean,
question,
'cause
I didn't
that's
calculate it
300,000
in
a
because there was a question at some point, would we, and at what point would you? I think eventually the goal is we would like to have them back, but I did not put that in the estimated
And we
costs.
spend around 300,000 a year, correct?
And we spend,
Two.
Our lease is 100.
it's less than that just because we share
we share.
costs for the staffing.
Well, less meaning what, 250?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, 250 total.
I mean,
So,
that
I mean-
also, I don't know that it's an even wash, but that also, if we bring them back, okay, we save money on the lease payment, but then we have to spend extra money on administrators and staff that we currently share,
But
so.
if we're looking at costs, you really have to look at everything.
And it
It's
is
not just, I mean, there would be savings.
But
It wouldn't cost more to bring them.
you could also, I mean,
Right.
depending on what direction we go, if we ended up with option B and we chose to keep Lincoln, then we wouldn't need to build
Those
that
additional
addition
classrooms.
space. So
At
that would
North.
save costs there.
Right.
I know, but you can't, Lincoln is not a long-term master's facility plan. It's not. Having students be in another district, it's
different.
not a long, I mean, if we're talking, when we decided with Lincoln, that was short-term. So we cannot we cannot think of keeping Lincoln as part of the long-range plan. It's not. It's not optimal to have other students out of your district. It's not. So you cannot think that is going to be part of a 10, 20-year plan.
It's not. It's in both plans to bring
Right,
it
but
back.
I think
it's-
a lot of people are thinking that, we'll just always have Lincoln over there. It's not, just to make clear, that is not a good long-term.
I think everybody agrees there because in both plans, we're bringing those kids back. Again, it comes down to the priority of, okay, now that we have the plan, can we do it all? What can we do? That comes down to the, okay, at this point in time, in 5 years, in 8 years, whatever, are we going to do that, given our priorities and our, whatever money we have? So that's part of the discussion. It's not that we're saying, oh, we're going to pick a plan and not bring them back. No, the plans include bringing them all back. So I don't think that's a big issue there.
Yeah, but we haven't really calculated costs. We haven't.
Correct. So the savings on either A or B is the same. So you only need to look at the difference in costs between A and B when you're when you're trying to decide between, you know, what's the payoff between one or the other? What's the
If you
better
bring
one?
Lincoln back under option A, you're not spending any extra money because the classroom space is already there. You're spending extra money because of the administrators and stuff, but
Yep.
space-wise. Under option B, if you bring Lincoln back, you're spending money for 3 additional or was it
6. You
Six
can- you have
additional
to put 6
classrooms.
is the idea.
So that's construction costs.
But that's
plus the
built
administrative
into
costs.
our estimates.
Right, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it's,
You're talking about operational things that happen.
But operational wide, it's a wash, whether if in both
we don't know if
cases.
it's a wash. I've asked for that cost benefit breakdown a few times, and I don't recall if I got an answer, or if I did, I don't recall what it was. But what is the lease payment versus what we would have to spend to replace the people that we're currently sharing with those other 2 districts? There is a cost benefit there, and I don't know that.
Correct, there's a cost benefit there,
it-
but if you compare A and B, if we bring them back,
Right,
in both cases, we don't
Same
have that lease.
operational cost.
It's the
Right,
same amount
right.
of savings in both
Right.
sides. So we don't, I guess, in my mind, I don't need to consider that part of the savings when I'm considering A or B. I'm only looking at the differences.
and in my
Try to
mind,
decide.
I was going, if we do option B, one of the flexibilities is to not bring them back.
Right, that is a flexibility, but that's
Right.
way down the road in terms of what we may or may not do.
Nick, can I ask you a question, and you don't have to answer it?
Uh-oh.
Okay,
The vote that the core team took when they made their recommendation was obviously prior to the December 5th meeting. And I know at the time it was unanimously option A. At this point, are you still preferring option A, or what do you prefer? What would you recommend?
You as
And
in
you don't
him
have to
or
answer
he
it.
as a core?
He was part
Nick
of it.
as a person?
Nick as a person.
Because I don't
He's
even
turning-
know,
He's turning red now.
and if you don't want to answer it, don't answer it.
You should answer it.
Pardon?
You should answer it.
Lou has spoken.
Well, he's the leader of the district. He should.
He is, but if you didn't want to
should
influence
absolutely
our
answer it.
decision,
You
you
should
know.
answer it. It is a tough decision.
Core representative, I think there's a public comment, right? I'd like to see if they have any other, they or the royal they.
By a show of hands. No.
That
Do
time-
you want me to answer that? Because.
Is that something that the board wants?
I'm
Nick
more than happy to
answer?
answer it if the board wants me to answer that. The only reason I hesitate is that,
It-
is it,
I mean,
Will it
you-
influence
I don't
us?
want to, people to think I'm pushing in one direction or another as you've received the information you're considering. I appreciate being asked, and I'll be more than happy to answer that question.
Well, you're the one, we will get credit or blame, whether this plan works or doesn't, or passes or fails, but you will be the one having to be on the ground with the troops, so to speak, every single day.
I mean, you make a recommendation to the other issue.
I do.
This was a huge one. I make a recommendation.
But I think,
Maybe, yeah.
but I think what I'm hearing is the recommendation was not from Nick. It is coming from the core team.
And I
Nick
was
he
part
was on
of
the
it.
core
I was
team.
part of it.
Nick was part of the
Right,
core
so
team.
I'm saying,
If-
did his opinion change between taking that vote over a month
Okay.
ago and now?
So you're saying
'Cause
with
now
that
he's heard a lot
unanimous
of
vote,
discussion
we already
and
knew
have-
what
Oh, I
Nick
see
voted
what
on.
you're
Right, I know he
Right.
voted,
Okay.
I'm assuming if they said it was unanimous,
Unanimous, yep.
that it was option A way back when, is it still option A? Did it change over to option B? Like, now that you're hearing discussion and feedback?
Well,
and-
we heard from the core team Monday night, and the core team was asked to present 2 options to the board, which they have. Both options, they told us, work, and they told us that they prefer option A.
I'm more than happy to answer the question if the board wants to hear it and give you rationale.
That's a yes.
I
What
would
would-
like to hear it.
What would hearing from Nick?
First of all, wait a minute. First of all, we haven't heard from 2 board members. So I don't know if Jeannie wants to make some comments at this time, but I do, if everybody else has finished with their comments.
Oh, yeah, I figured Jeff is.
We'll let you finish the comments and
Yeah.
then we can come
Sure.
back to your
That's
Why
question.
don't we finish our comments and then we'll revisit the question of whether or not we want we as a board would like Nick to, I haven't said I've said something, but I haven't said my piece. Same with Jeff and Jeannie, so.
Yeah.
I guess from the start, I looked at the core team as being the detailed, sorted out, do the work, do the research, come back to us with the information. And I guess, obviously, we have to have discussion. We have to be going through all this information. But I also feel like we don't have to, I'm not articulate with this right now. I'm not eloquent with this right now. But I'm just thinking that on one hand, it also doesn't have to get carried away where we're nitpicking and where we're micromanaging what work has already been done on this. And I think it's been very clear, and even given all the other little pieces that we're bringing up now, trying to evaluate, in my mind and in my heart of hearts, it has always been option A that has been the better choice, from the way it was presented to us to looking at the realities that we're in now, looking at the realities that we've come from. And I guess I just still feel that given the problems we want to avoid in the future in our 10-year plan, that it would be to our benefit, it would behoove us to have the flexibility, to have the foresight, to have the creative planning and thinking that the option A would afford us.
Can I ask some questions on that? So what flexibility do you see in A that does not exist in B?
I think just having another freestanding school, being able to work with traffic by going around it, having the STEAM. My only thing is I prefer STEAM instead of STEM, because I think that's still more foregoing than the STEM, and that's the more. But I realize, we're saying, no, we want to go with STEM. And so I'm not going to, but I
We
think,
have art rooms, right? So
but that's
It's not
not,
the
that's
same.
right. That's not the same. It's not the same.
The arts.
It's not the same. And the arts have always been left out to the side. And that's why, even more foresight and more forelooking, we're realizing the integration of the arts within the engineering and the mechanics, because they're all interdisciplinary. And I just feel that it's just a better setup.
again, back to my question, I'm just
Can
trying to
I-
understand.
but Can
what-
I answer your
Sure.
question? A couple things that maybe Jeannie's not thinking about. I do think from a programming perspective, if you're looking at the School of Dual Language and early childhood and pre-K, the options to expand those programs are available in A, where they're not in
Limited in
B.
B, absolutely.
And I think the other flexibility in A that I see is because you're not already putting additions onto the buildings, that should we get growth where we're not expecting it, especially on the North Campus somewhere, you still down the road have space to put on an addition, whereas in option B, I feel like if you put these additions on now within the next, 2-3 years as you phase it out, you're kind of married to hoping that the neighborhoods work to go to those schools and you're not getting growth where you're not expecting it. I don't want to put these humongous additions onto Town Line and then it ends up being that the forecast for the Cuneo kids was way over what it is and we underestimated from a different neighborhood and so on and so forth. I just think there's more flexibility with that under A, where there's still room for additions at the buildings.
None of it. You have to pick up hours north of town line, just one.
So I understand that,
Google
that
Plus.
thinking in terms of that flexibility that A provides, but both A and B were designed to handle our 10-year projection at the high level C. So the only time that that would come into fruition is if our projections are way off in terms of where the kids are coming from and which boundaries are.
The
But
distribution.
how is
Okay,
it
so-
handled
Right.
more efficient? How is it handled? We know that it's able to absorb it.
Right.
But how,
But
again, the size of some of the buildings, and like I said, at 700 and some, over the summer, it was being talked about that was an unmanageable, I mean, I'm quoting, an unmanageable amount of students. So, that's a real thing. So it's like, yeah, we know both plans will be able to house them, but we're still talking about which is the best way. And I mean, it seems like, how could it be unmanageable at this number, and now a bigger number over here is not going to be?
It's really, to me, it's 2 schools. So it's 450 for dual language is one, and then the 600 for the other one. So
Talking about a number of kids.
But it's
in
the
one
bodies.
spot. Number of people in
Correct.
one spot. Come on, you
It's
see
the number
that.
of people, it's the
but
parking
in
lot
terms of the
thing.
flexibility, though, it seems like it only comes into play, like I said, if we're way off in terms of we build out and now we need some extra space in one building because one community all of a sudden just grew hugely. And to me, that's a possibility that's possible, but it's, to me, somewhat improbable because we're already shooting for the high projection and we're already shooting 10 years out. So the difference is, putting that flexibility in our back pocket for something that I'm not sure will happen. It's
I agree
possible.
with you.
I'm not
Okay.
positive it'll happen. I think where my concern for the flexibility comes is, I mean, now it's been already really 3 years since the reorganization committee did their work, which I was on. And at the time, we sort of thought there was no room for more growth in the district, that we were pretty much landlocked at this point. This was as big as it was going to get. So what you're going to get is generational turnover, but there won't be new development, because we already thought that. Nothing was up for sale. I'm not
Who
sure
knows?
Loyola even owned Cuneo at that point. It might have still been privately held by the family. So what else do we not know of? What if some developer comes in, tears down strip
Best Buy
shopping centers and
and,
puts up apartments? I mean, you don't know. And so I'm sitting there going, like, we have the projections, yes, as long as nothing really unforeseen comes up. But
So
3 years ago, we didn't see any new development, and now we have 3 new developments.
So that flexibility that you talk about, I agree it's there in A. There's no doubt about it, it's there. Where I try to value that flexibility, though, then is what's the cost of that flexibility? And to me, it's that extra $10 million, where plus the annual, operating cost of $400,000 roughly a year, the extra students, 500 kids on the south side. So those things are known. Those will happen. So we're trading off flexibility for something that maybe, may not happen. We don't know, just to keep in our back pocket, against something that we know for sure will happen. We will realize an extra $400,000 in operating costs. We will have to ask for an extra $10 million. We will have 500 more kids on the south side than the other option. So to trade off something somewhat speculative, yes, it's probable, it might happen, for some knowns, to me, it just doesn't make sense.
But I agree with you. The flexibility, I mean, I believe both plans. But again, you can't discount the fact that what is earning. And, then you're talking about the size and the size of the building, number one, but also the congestion. I mean,
Yeah, you're
I'm
adding
not
more
saying whether-
congestion with A on the south side.
No, I'm
so-
talking about
Whether
each
it's in the building or outside
I'm
of the
talking-
building.
yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is
No driving in the hallways.
Like
Yeah.
I said, I believe it'll be
There's no
well
question
absorbed,
having
but-
an extra building gives you that, but at what cost? And that's
Well,
where I'm trying to
It's
say,
Well, and
okay,
it's really,
Right.
it's Town Line is the only school that we're seeing a significant difference in the number between.
I
the
agree, but that
enrollment
could
of
be
the-
1,100
the
kids.
kids.
I mean, and so why should 1,100 kids, have to?
It's 150 more than what we have. We're at 928 right now, and the projection for Town Line is 1076. So it's about
I understand, but
150
look what's
more than
happened.
what we
Look what's
have
happened
now.
at Elementary South from the difference between 700
Again,
and
both
760.
plans take care of it, so-
you can't say it's only this amount of kids.
No, but
we only had
it's a
we only,
size.
Yes,
I mean,
it is a
it's
size issue.
It's a significant size, for sure.
So I mean,
It's, I feel like Plan A, like Robin says, definitely gives you more flexibility if enrollment or if growth is above projection C. I feel
Well,
like
no, just the
Plan
distribution.
Distribution is way off. yeah.
Plan
Way
B
off.
actually gives you more flexibility if it is not as great. So then you
No, I
can
think we're
kind
gonna
of-
hit C. I'm not debating the overall number, just where are they coming from?
But I'm just saying in terms of flexibility, it actually depends on what the numbers shake out to be, because let's just say.
Well, it all depends on that. Either
hypothetically-
plan depends on that.
But I mean, B, you could not, if it's not needed, you don't have to do an addition, and so.
No, once we take the money from the referendum.
We have so many years to start.
You have
yeah.
so many
Years,
years to
yeah.
start it, so.
Yeah.
But no, once we get the approval to take the money, we don't have to go and sell the bonds. It's only, the clock doesn't
Right.
start until we sell the bonds.
You have
And
5
then
years
3
to sell
years.
bonds, 3 years after that
So
to
it's
utilize the
a year.
dollars.
Right, but sometime within that window, you have to put those
You have to make a
additions
decision,
on,
right.
and you have to put them
Yeah.
on
Right.
where you said you were gonna
Yeah,
put them
right.
on.
Gotta-
Does Jeff have comments?
Yeah. Jeff, did you had some things you want to say?
I do.
You're up.
All right. First, I'd like to thank the core team again for all of their work. I'm not going to go into the hours, but you know how much it was.
Sorry.
The board for their work in reviewing and analyzing the options. You guys have all made some excellent points. A couple of the benefits of having a board discussion and then voting on an item at a subsequent meeting is we get the opportunity to obtain additional input from the public and feedback, and we also get to reflect on the board discussions that we've had. So I've identified 3 points that I'd like to make for my board colleagues to consider. The first is both options have been identified by the core team as meeting the needs of the district in terms of meeting the estimated student enrollment growth and the facilities needs for learning that have been discussed, including the STEM program. Both options have pros and cons. The main difference is the question of construction of the new elementary school building in option A or additions to the existing buildings in option B, with the key impact, as Jason from DLR pointed out the other night, option A is a front-end commitment on a new elementary building once ground is broken. At that point, under option A, the district will have committed to the cost to construct and operate an entirely new facility with less flexibility, like I think Gita mentioned. That is contrasted with a controlled growth strategy presented in option B, which allows the district to construct in phases over a time frame of the educational master plan, as we see where growth over the next few years goes towards the Series C and whether those are accurate. I don't agree with the point previously raised that if the Series growth is above estimate, because we're using Series C as the maximum, that we'll have the space with the new building, because Series C is the worst case, and there's a limit and there's also a maximum to the actual enrollment that we can see in this community. My second point is that, in my opinion, the cost to operate a new elementary building have been underestimated still. We have been provided with revised cost estimate on the operating costs for the new building. Utilities and staff would be a difference of approximately, let's say, $400,000. This estimate does not include several costs that would not be incurred in option B, such as additional contractor costs for food service, additional contractor costs for landscaping, additional bus service, additional contracted cleaning services, additionally duplicative programs that might be required in a new building, such as staff for English language learners and special services that would not go back and forth from another building, may not have been fully accounted for. In my opinion, the new building additional operating costs may easily exceed $500,000 in our operating budget. Plus, we will have the additional operating costs for the kindergarten center, which we don't currently have. If you think that $500,000 or more is a trivial amount in our annual budget, I will remind everybody how difficult it is to cut an operating budget and maintain the programs that we want to. 52% or so of our operating budget is relatively fixed in employee salaries and benefits. There's other expenses that are also fixed or higher, and I remind board members that this year's budget includes an operating deficit of about $784,000, and that when it came time to implement the one-to-one technology program for next year, and that's only for grades 6 through 8 at this time, it required an increase in technology fees for our family. So I'm sorry to paint a possible dire picture, but here's what could happen when the operating costs in the district exceeds the revenues for a number of years, and part of the reserve have been spent upon the kindergarten center, which I'm not speaking against doing. But at that point, the district's going to be looking at cuts to programs that we value, such as extracurriculars, arts, and curriculum and equipment to support the STEM center. Or the district's going to need to go back to the voters for a referendum to support higher operating costs for the district. And I say this because I care about maintaining the quality of our program. How proud are board members going to be if we need to cut the programs that we enjoy due to the operating costs? Money obtained from the capital improvements through the referendum will not be available to be spent to support the additional operating costs. The district also may be facing additional expenses in the future for pension liability that might be put back on the district, cuts in state educational funding, and a property tax freeze. One of the great risks that option may present is to have the building to operate and maintain that may not be necessary. I would much rather see the money spent on meeting our growth needs as they occur in a controlled manner, and additional money continue to go to the program that will contribute directly to the learning for our students. And my last point is this, and I say this for my board colleagues to consider in terms of finances, regardless of which option is chosen. We represent all the people in the district. I'm disappointed to hear comments from people, and I'm not just referring to board members, but numerous people have said this in the comments that we've heard, that $80 or $100 or whatever the amount is not a significant increase in taxes. There's 27% of the students in our schools that are on free or reduced lunch. So if you add that to the number of families that are just above that or that are struggling to get by, and the number of people without children in the district that might be on a fixed income, there's a significant number of people in this community that even $80 to $100 a year difference or more in their taxes is a significant amount. And I congratulate those people that might be in the top 10% of wage earners that don't mind the tax increase and are willing to spend whatever it takes. But also remember that our existing programs in the schools and often new programs that we add, such as the one-to-one technology program, require the district to fund those programs for the people that are on free and reduced lunch. I'm not speaking against that. I'm just pointing out that there's another increase in operating costs that need to be considered. So I ask each of the board members, when you vote, to keep in mind your fiduciary responsibility to be a steward of our taxpayer dollars. And those are my comments, and those are why I lean toward supporting option B.
Thank you, Jeff. Any comments or any rebuttal or?
I don't have a rebuttal, but regardless of which option we end up going with, I'm assuming at this point Jason Lemke still didn't answer you, Nick?
No.
Okay.
I think he's doing a presentation and then
How dare he? I just would really love confirmation that regardless of which option we go with, that those STEM centers are right-sized based upon student population. What I really don't want to do is go create a situation where there is not equitable opportunities, and we know that going in. And therefore, if he says, sure, no problem, we can right-size it, does that change the overall dollar amount? that was given for both options, because if he gave $650,000 per building, per STEM lab, that tells me the assumption is same size STEM lab at every building. So what's the difference? I don't want to go out for a referendum and now we're going, uh-oh, to right size a STEM lab at 2 of our buildings, we need an extra $2 million or 2 point whatever. So when we're coming down to that part of it, after we choose one of these options, I just want to make sure that we're right sizing those STEM labs.
Would just be building. Because South is going to
Okay.
be both.
I'm just saying, I don't want to create a situation off when we know it out of the gate that it's gonna.
I would, without being able to speak to Jason specifically to that, I think you have to go on the patterns that he's exhibited, and 650 is what he's done for each building. So I would assume he's considering similar size facilities at each building.
Right.
With that said, I think in the design phase, when you get into designing areas and making the final judgments, we know that he has tried to estimate these as conservatively as possible. So there's wiggle room in increases in some square footage. I can't guarantee you that, I can make a STEM center twice as big as it's currently planned. But I think that there is room in there, because if you pick a question that's fairly general, dollars can move to where you think there are some
Right.
needs. So I think it could be addressed through the process.
Right.
Um,
No, I appreciate that, but remember when somebody said, can we put a second story onto this addition?
Right.
And he said, yes, but you're not just doubling classroom size, because now you also have to add a staircase and an elevator.
right.
So I don't want to just say it automatically increases by a classroom or 2 class,
Right. If the only building that you're looking at, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head off of that, if you're really looking at Town Line is the one that would be the one we'd really have to address. If you're doing a 2-story addition, I would believe if they had to add an additional elevator, they would have had to with that. Even though it has an elevator, there may be a need for an additional elevator. So I do think that it could be addressed
Okay.
through the design phase, and it would be something that we'd have to put on the table early and say, we want to make sure, because I think you bring about a fair point. If you have twice the size, you want to make sure that there's
Right.
equity.
I don't want the students getting a half as frequent an opportunity to experience.
I think the numbers do bear that out though too, because the cost for all the STEM buildings was like $3.2 million. The original cost for B was $6 million. We saved 2 by moving over. So now our total STEM cost for B is about 4. So it's more than what we would have spent on STEM
but
for
was it
A.
figured out by putting the same size STEM lab on each building? That's what I'm saying. Even if it's only going to be another
So
$250,000.
So that's
I wanna
another
know that.
$800,000 buffer that I think he built in,
Okay.
or something like that. That's my assumption, but just
My
given the way the
experience with
numbers are.
construction is there is no buffer that works to our advantage. I mean, I think my experience is if they tell you it's going to be $650,000, it's really going to be $700,000. It's not going to be 630 and we get the change. So I think the buffer is very quickly eaten. In new
I'm just comparing A
construction.
and B. So given the cost for
I'm
the
just
STEM
saying, no
centers A
matter
and
what
B.
option we choose, A, B, or
Yep.
hybrid thereof, I want to make sure that we're.
It would need to be addressed. I think you pose an excellent question. I can't answer for him. I know he couldn't make it today. If you look at how he broke it out,
Right.
I think he broke it out for what he was thinking would be enough, an equal space, but it could be addressed and should be addressed if that's what is a need, and
Okay.
have to work on that. You want me to answer the question?
Okay, back to Robin's question to Nick. In terms of,
It was mine.
So
Who seconded it?
so the question is, given our let me rephrase it and just make sure that's clear, is that given our discussion the last 2 days, would Nick's vote on the plans change based on what he has heard?
Has Nick's,
His next vote.
Because Nick's voted on the.
Preferred
as-
plan changed since they voted in December.
So let me share, first of all, again, I'm very proud of the work that the core team did and the commitment they gave in their approach to this as we go through. Both, as I've stated, address the identified needs that we have. Both do that. I would look to the board and tell you, be bold and have vision right now. Be brave. Pick the solution that supports your strategic plan. Pick the solution you think that's going to change a child's life better. I can't answer the questions for transportation, but we'll look for solutions. Those are all the things that you mentioned are valid. But if you were to overlay the strategic plan and overlay all the work that you have done over the last couple of years, from a NEST program to all those things, and you look at the strategic plan and you ask yourself, which one of these fits our vision and fits the strategic plan? It's bold. You're asking the community for money either way, but you're going to be asking the community and looking for support. I would tell you that my opinion has not changed from option A. I still believe in the core team's work. I still believe in the vision of that particular one. I believe that A, though it may be more expensive, is aligned better with the strategic plan and vision. A provides you opportunities that you can't get. In B, they both have pros and cons, but I do believe that A aligns better with that, and my opinion has not changed on that through these conversations. There are questions that you've asked that I go, oh, that was a very good question. The idea of, for B, can you get STEM on there? There's a great conversation, and we verified we could do that. Yeah, that's good. But I would tell you that I think option A is better aligned to what we're trying to accomplish for our students, and it's a longer-term, bigger vision picture. And I would encourage the board, whatever decision you make, it's a bold decision. But I would encourage you that I believe that A aligns to that better, supports that better, provides that in a better way. One simple example is that the School of Dual Language, it would have more of an identity because it's in its own building as opposed to into a shared building. I think that in itself helps encourage the ability in option A to expand your EC pre-Ks at some point. There's some ability there where we don't in B. Long term, I think those are things that I think can help. So if that helps with your answer, or if that shares with you, I haven't changed my opinion from the questions. They're all excellent questions, and you've all brought excellent points. But I do think A supports that strategic plan.
In this kindergarten center, what are we going to do about if we pay for that outside of the referendum? What are we going to do if that goes over budget?
Just change the question.
Yeah.
Last, right? 2 days ago.
That's
To include
that's
that.
the next point of discussion. So the next item on the
I know, but I think it's going to affect how strapped for money I feel in choosing option A or B. I mean, I understand Jeff's points, and I take them very seriously, and he makes a very good point, and especially with the uncertainty in the state right now.
It's a very compelling
It's a
argument.
very compelling argument, and if we are going to end up spending more than we are thinking, and we need that flexibility built in, that matters to me.
So for your question on kindergarten, again, I believe that the DLR group has been conservative with their estimates and tried to be realistic. If you delayed the kindergarten center for 2 years, it would increase the costs.
Yeah. No, I
So
wouldn't do that.
it's something that you have to work on, and the estimates are built off of the current environment. We, at this point, we're recommending you use the dollars out of cash reserves and not refunding any of the bonds that you currently have. If you came to a situation where it could turn out to be a 13.5 and not a 12, you could go to the refunding of the bonds to make up the 1.5 to finish that off and to do that. If it got into the $15 million range, then
I thought
I
we
think,
agreed to 10. Where did 12 come from?
well, the estimated
11.7.
cost would, remember,
11.7.
in the original conversation a while back, the question to the board was, how many dollars unassigned, how many dollars are you comfortable with assigning to the project? Or the presentation, preparation for the presentation on the 5th. The preparation for the 5th was, that way we could say if it was 55, we took 10 off, it was 45, and give a more accurate view of what the taxpayers would be paying.
Okay.
So initially it was consider 10 put
Gotcha.
towards that. So But if it jumped into a $15 million range or something like that, then we have a serious issue of,
Well,
can you,
they underestimated it by 50%. That's a huge problem in
right,
their
yeah, I don't think, I don't think that's
I
gonna
don't think
happen.
that's what happened.
No. And some of it is, after it's designed, there are some options in how you bid it and how you would construct it. There's some savings that could potentially be exhibited in there. So, if that answers your question on A and it answers your question on
Yeah,
kindergarten.
thank you.
Okay, so any other, well, we will always, also will have an opportunity for more discussions if and when a motion is made to adopt one of these plans later on tonight. So this is just the discussion part. Then when we come to the action after the motion is made or not, or if a motion is made, then we obviously will have the opportunity to have more discussion. So at this point in time, are there any other comments that any board member wants to make considering the education facility master plan? No. So then we can move on to the next discussion item, which is the proposed kindergarten center for the Park District. So we were all at the joint meeting last night,
For 6 minutes.
all of us at the Park District Sullivan Center, and we had, I think, 3 people in the public come, and it lasted a total of 11 minutes. The point of that meeting last night was to get more public feedback into what the Park District is planning to do in terms of working with the school district in terms of building the kindergarten center. So the Park District Board at that time took action to formally direct their director to start working on the intergovernmental agency or intergovernmental agreement that will be needed in order to proceed with the work on the kindergarten center. I know we've had some discussion about that. I just want to make sure that the board is in consensus in terms of also directing Nick to start working on the IGAs. You know, there may be multiples because we may have to work with both or all 3 parties, the library, the village, as well as the Park District in terms of getting together an IGA in order to proceed with the kindergarten building. So this is, it's a little bit premature because we haven't approved any plan yet. So this will be something that we'll talk about, if and when we approve a plan, then at that point in time, then I will be asking to see if we have consensus to direct Nick to start the IGA work. Any other?
I just had a question regarding that. I know it's with the Park District and the village is there. The Park District is there, the library is there. Is the village also involved, would be involved with some of the, so they
Some
would-
of the land between the Sullivan Center and the library is the village.
Villages.
is
So,
owned.
so all 4 of us would be involved in this?
Potentially, yes.
Potentially, okay.
Everybody's at the table.
No, I just wanted to clarify that and make sure that, it's not just the library because of the proximity or the Park District whom we are building with, but also the villages involved.
Any other discussion on the kindergarten center? We've talked about this a lot, so it's in both plans. All right. Next discussion item is the potential referendum question to address the education facility master plan. So
You have copies of 2 samples. At the last board meeting, the board asked for a general, not a specific. The language was put in for the STEM center, so we took out separate STEM centers, but we put in language for STEM facilities, so it can be utilized that way, however would be needed. Depending on which plan that you would go with, if you pick one. One of them is titled Option A, and one is titled Option B, to align with. So quickly, if we look at Option A, it talks about the district would build and equip a school building and acquire and improve the site thereof. So that is the purchasing of the land and designing and building. And then it is build, equip additions to improve the sites of and alter, repair, and equip school buildings, including to provide STEM facilities. And then it goes on to issue bonds. So Option A is for purchasing land and building a building. Option B is the same language without the building a building. It states to build and equip additions to improve the sites of and alter, repair, and equip school buildings, including to provide STEM facilities, acquire and improve a site, that would be to purchase the land, but not to build on it at that point, and then issue the bonds to cover the cost of that particular project. So B is for the all addition, and A would be for the new building, the recommended option. They're very similar languages. We did make the change to include STEM facilities, so you could utilize those dollars more flexibly.
Any comments, questions, concerns? I have one. I'm still worried about the timing. I'm not against doing the referendum because I know we need to, regardless of which plan we pick. I just am uneasy about trying to get something done and getting the proper amount of information out there, because that's what it will take to get this passed in April. It only gives us 3 months to educate the public, to provide the information that they need to make a decision. In past referendums, I know we went to some stuff at the joint conference where they say they did it fairly quickly. The last one that I was involved with in early 2000, that was a lot of work. So I'm just trying to get a gauge of what other members feel about. I asked that question on Monday. Jason seemed to think it's not a problem, you could do it. I've heard from other people that this is a hard thing to do. So I'm just worried about the timing of it. The difference between April of this year and March of next year gives us that time. But the downside is if it doesn't pass in April, or if it doesn't pass in March, then we are then 2 years behind in terms of trying to get the money. So trying to weigh that, but
But if
Trying to
we
get-
don't do it at all in April, then we're still waiting years.
no, then we can put it on the
March.
March of 2018. So
Right,
it's
but if
about a
this
year
fails
later.
Now, it can still go on March of 28.
It could, yes.
The question
It's
is,
just like,
would it be more successful if you provide yourself more time to prepare
yeah.
and get the information?
I almost feel like it's too much time. Like if you told me, could I choose April versus June, I would choose June. But if you tell me April versus the following April, and then what if it fails the following April? Now you're back to the drawing board and you have another year before you can do it. So
I mean, and I think it's like that information fatigue that Jason also
Yes.
mentioned. I mean, we had 2 information sessions with the Park District. The first one, we had a lot of people come out with questions. Last night, we had nobody come out with questions. I mean, that's just a minor, but I think
I do think it's going to be a lot of work for whatever volunteers step forward to, if they decide that they're in favor of it and they want to,
But even for us, I mean, I think we should agree that it is going to be a lot of work for us, and
Yeah.
all of us are going to step up to give up that information, because we
Yeah.
can give information, not campaign, but give information, and we should all be willing to step up. And I think I can't speak for everybody, but I'm willing to do the work for the next 3 months, because I truly feel that I do agree with you. It is a bit rushed. Maybe it will be a lot busy. It will put a lot on the plate of administrators and us. But as Robin mentioned, if it was only waiting for 3 months, it would be different. Maybe if it doesn't pass, I hope it passes. But if it doesn't, maybe it will teach us some things and we have an year to correct course and stuff and put it at a better form next time, But I want to give it a shot, because otherwise waiting a full year might be, I don't think we would know till we put it on there what people thought, it would give us more time. Maybe we can start campaigning from September when the school starts, so it'll give us 6 months of campaigning, information, to give out information, to give information starting September when the school year starts. But I feel that if we've done, the core team has done a lot of work. We have a lot of work. We have the numbers. I think it is worth giving a shot, knowing very well that all of us are going to have to pitch in.
So I want to do whatever it takes to get it passed. So I'm just thinking that the best chance is if we do it right and take our time versus trying to do it in 3 months.
So that assumes that if it fails in April, that would increase the likelihood of it failing the following year?
No,
No.
no,
So
not at
then-
all.
He's just saying he wants to get it right the first time.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to go a second time. And I
But what-
totally appreciate that. I just think
There's a chance
the
we do-
hardest
they do get
hitting
it right.
part, the hardest hitting part for any volunteers that, you know, organize themselves and do some kind of campaign and any information we put out there, the hardest part is always going to be those last few weeks. When
Yes.
people are paying attention and they're tuned in and there's an election coming up, and
That's where
I think that no matter what, we're going to feel this giant rush at the end, whether we had all that time in between or not. Because even if we have all this time in between, we really can't do much before like September because nobody's going to pay attention 11 months in
No,
advance.
so it's not that we would take this entire, 15 months to do it. It says, okay, if it's not until March, like Jeannie said, or Sonali said, we don't have to start until September. It gives us between now and then to get ready. And
But
then,
our first community
so-
meeting on this was in October, it
When,
sounded
what
like.
are we losing by going in April?
I just don't know if that's enough time to mobilize the community.
So if it fails, we've lost nothing though, because we wouldn't have done it anyway.
Yeah, one option gives you a chance. Doesn't give you any chance.
Right, and
Right.
we've got a lot of movement, we've got a lot of mobility around this as we've been working on it month after month now already. So I think that it's only the next step is to move to this referendum in April.
I think it has been out there a long. I said, especially people that are in the schools, known 2 years ago that the class sizes are 30. They know that this last year that we've been buying get portables, and they know we've been talking about it. I mean, it's been out there.
What do you think, Jeff?
Jeff,
Hello?
any thoughts on the
Jeffy?
timing?
Uh-oh, we lost him.
Jeff?
He's in New Orleans. He doesn't want to be with us.
Sure, it's not a lot of time, but we asked Jason that, and he said that, that a lot of districts decide near the deadline, and then they have roughly 3 months to prepare and make information available. If we don't try, then we don't have any chance of passing it. And he said nobody pays attention till right before the election anyway. So I think we ought to, we
Let's do
know
it.
we need the money to do either of these options, so we should see what we can do to get it to pass the first time. And if not, we haven't lost anything, and we're at the same date that we would be at if we don't do anything this April and we wait till next.
Yeah, I would say, why would we not want to do it? It just seems, we've got the movement, we've got all these pieces that have been in play for so long that it's the next step.
I mean, the only reason I would even consider postponing it is if the majority of lovely board colleagues said, we don't think either of these plans is doable and we have to go back to the drawing board. That would be the only reason I would
Okay.
think perhaps we're being hasty. But if we believe in one of these plans and we believe that it needs to happen and solves our strategic plan, I think
that's not in
no
question.
time
It's
like the
just-
present than to take the pulse of the community and figure out, do they agree with us and support it? And if so, yay, we can get started. And if they don't, then we know that much sooner that there's something that needs to be tweaked.
Okay. Just based on my past experience, it was a lot longer. And a lot of these things take a long time.
I agree. It's
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 quick.
gonna be busy.
It's,
It's gonna be a busy couple months.
okay. That's all I had to
Lou
say
wanted
about,
more meetings, so it should be good.
that's all I have for myself in terms of the discussion on the potential referendum question. Does anybody else have anything else?
No.
Okay. Now, to the action item. Now, the main party hits. Okay, so we've got, on our agenda, we have a action item to approve an educational facility master plan. So we have in front of us Plan A, option A. We have in front of us option B prime, I'm going to call it, because it was the original B with some changes that we had talked about on.
So how do we word
Monday.
that? Should we word that differently of saying option B with STEM centers attached to the
in each building, I think that would suffice, because that was the change.
Yeah.
With the updated cost estimate, I think that would cover it. So, I mean, we didn't just look at A or B and picked one. We actually modified one to, in my opinion, make it better. Made the plan better at a lower cost. So I think it was a big win-win there. So those are the two options in front of us. Looking for a motion then.
I move that the Board of Education approve a 10-year educational master's facility plan that includes option.
I second.
Motion by Lou, second by Jeannie.
All right.
Roll call vote, please.
Lou Gata.
Aye.
Wait, there's.
Oh, wait, discussion. Any discussion? Sorry,
Oh, I'm
my
sorry.
fault. I'm not good at this, Jeff. I don't do this often. I miss
So hard
you.
on yourself, Daisy.
I miss you, Jeff. Oh, any discussion?
No.
All right, I do.
I would just like to say, those operating costs, fixed operating costs, put in jeopardy the programs that we value so much. If
I agree with Jeff. I appreciate what Nick had said about being bold and going with option A and aligning with our strategic plan, but that comes at a cost. And to me, what Jeff was saying is, I'm worried that that cost then prevents us from actually doing some of the stuff that we want to do in the strategic plan. I mean, if one of the big things that we just did this year, the 1-to-1, that cost $200,000 a year, per year, ongoing. Now, if we're going to increase our annual operating costs of $400,000, what else are we not going to do? So the facility allows us to do the things that we want to do in the strategic plan. But if our budget doesn't allow us to do it, it doesn't really matter if we have the building space to do it or not. So to me, that's just a really tough hill to get over in terms of, yeah, we've got this great space and it's bold, and I agree that it gives us that. But I'm just worried that with everything that's coming down, we're gonna have to cut programs like Jeff said. So we're going the other way in terms of our strategic plan. So just looking at the numbers of the known numbers, we know what's going to happen. I'm afraid of that. I mean,
and when you're forced to cut programs, you can't predict ahead of time. No, you have to make.
and I think that the other big thing for me is comparing A and B is the dollar amount. $10 million difference is a lot of money. That's almost 24%, 23% more between B and A. That's a lot of money. And I'm trying to weigh, what are we buying with that? And what I see is what we're buying for that is the potential to have, more programs because the space allows it. The potential to have flexibility that may or may not be needed. So that's just a paying a lot for something that may or may not come to fruition. And I don't believe that it's worth it.
When we do this motion, and when Lou just motioned for option A, do we have to add in there that it is with one of the buildings having a different size STEM center than is shown on the plan, or that just comes in the design phase?
Comes into the design phase.
Okay.
And I'm just going to say that this is probably the most difficult decision in the 4 years that I've been on the board. I have gone
more than
back
reorg?
and forth and flipped and flopped and considered every little angle. And as all of us have said, I think there's strong pros and cons with both plans. I think at the end of the day, kind of echoing what Jason and Jeff are saying, is the uncertainty of the current environment, especially within the state of Illinois, and the knowns versus the unknowns in terms of the dollars. And I'm hoping we can facilitate the strategic plan just as well in option. And I think probably what pushed me over the edge was just this difference in the student population on the south end, and I know Lou, you said it doesn't matter, but if parents can't get their kids to school, or, you know, people are stuck on Route 60, or, I mean, it just, I think it's a significant enough number that it's bothering me with option A. So my preference is option B.
Say, take epic chances. I think with option A, we still have a more clear, defined path with really realizing the full potential of our programs and not cutting programs, but of what our strategic plan vision is. It's more visionary.
No one's arguing that. It's just whether or not we can afford it. And that's something that we as a board need to consider. Like I said, having the space to do that is great. Not having the budget to do that then doesn't buy us anything. That's what I'm worried about. Okay, any other comments before we vote? Other discussion?
Can I just, I've received a text back. I have texted back to say, see if I can contact this person, to contact Jason. I'm just waiting to see if he responds back to that. He was in the air coming back from a meeting from another state. I don't know if he has the availability in between, so if you want to just give me a second and let me step out and try to see if I can contact him.
Take a bathroom.
Yeah,
That would be great.
or not.
Sure, we can take a bathroom break. I'm always the one requesting it before anyway, so there's no reason for me not to.
I don't want to keep everybody on pins and needles with the motion, but I need that anyway, and if we're waiting for Jason.
But I wouldn't want you to make an opinion if I now have an opportunity to ask him about the
Right.
STEM question.
Would it make a difference on your, I mean, would what we hear back from Jason
I don't
make
think
a
it's going to make a
difference?
difference necessarily on A or B, but the referendum question is going to come up pretty quickly after that.
Correct, yeah.
So,
No, but it isn't in the referendum question. It's the right sizing is in the design.
but
Yeah.
we have to put a dollar amount in that referendum question.
so
And
you
if he
think
says
that
it's
if
going to be $2 million more,
Okay,
that's going to be.
yeah, I see your
Yeah.
point.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, we'll take a quick 5-minute
We'll be
break.
back after the break.
Jeff?
Did you hear that? We're going to take a quick 5-minute break. So we're back from recess, if I can call that that.
I got this one.
We have a motion on the table, and we're in discussion on that, and Nick has some information for us.
I was able to contact Jason from DLR and ask him the question. The dollar amounts for the STEM were allocated equally for the equal size space. So if Town Line were needed to have increased STEM space, his recommendation would be that to double what is planned, you would want to raise your referendum question by $500,000. So if it's a $52 million question, you would want to make it 52.5
Okay,
to accommodate the need for the additional STEM for a larger building.
thank you.
Did you get into specifics with him at all about if a third story needed to be built or anything like that? Because that may increase the cost.
I did not ask him specifics about how the third story would increase the cost, but I told him that we talked about it being a third story on the additions. And so he, I'm sure, took that into his mind when he said you would want to increase by 500,000.
So now that it is 52.8 that we went to, so plus 5, so it would be 53.3?
Let me look back.
No, so the numbers I had was, for option A, it was 51, the total was 51,484,000 when we rounded up to the closest we rounded up to the millions. That's why we have 52 million. For option B, it was 41,100, or 41,100,862, thank you. Rounded that up to
To
42
42.
million. So we've already rounded up 900,000, so we could
Kind of
could
absorbs it.
keep it at 42
Two.
and still absorb
Okay.
that 500.
Okay.
Okay.
So even if we add the 500 to the 41.1, would that be at 41.6, and we still round up to 42?
Okay.
So the other is the numbers that you just heard. Remember, the original option A was roughly 63 million, and the original option adjusted, or option B was 52. The dollars that you just heard subtracted out the estimated cost for a kindergarten center.
Yes.
If you were going to ask for the kindergarten center, you need to put those back in
Right.
at that time.
But then we also need to put that in the
Question.
question
Question.
too, which,
But that's something that,
Yeah.
to be determined at this point. But
All right.
all right.
Should I remake that motion?
well, they need
For
to
the
have a
record.
vote.
For the record, you can restate your motion, or Wendy has it.
Well, it's already made.
Yeah.
But before we vote, we can rehear it if you want. Can you repeat the motion, please? Okay, that was motion by Lou and second by Jeannie. Roll call vote, please.
Lou Gata,
Aye.
Jeannie Engelmeyer,
Aye.
Sonali Patil,
Nay.
Jeff Bard,
Nay.
Ida Mueller,
Nay.
Robin Cleek, aye. Jason Tron.
Nay. Motion fails. 3 ayes, 4 nays. Any other motion for a facility master plan?
I may make the motion that the Board of Education approve a 10-year education facilities master plan that includes option B with the STEM centers to be built onto each individual building.
Motion by Sonali. Any second?
Second.
Second by Gita. Discussion.
Well, at this point, we might as well vote aye,
Well,
right?
it's another motion. We have an opportunity to discuss again.
I know, but that would be weird now if I said nay.
No, this is an option for us to
No.
vote again. Okay, so roll call, please.
May I
Oh.
just remind that the question for the STEM centers has been addressed for the additional dollars with the recommendation from bond council that you would round up. So the dollar amount that you've been provided does incorporate that, so you should be okay.
Okay. Roll call
Okay,
vote.
roll call vote, please.
Jason Tron,
Aye.
Jeff Bard,
Aye.
Ida Mueller,
Aye.
Lou Gata,
Aye.
Robin Cleek, aye. Sonali Patil,
Aye.
Jeannie Engelmeyer.
Nay.
Motion passes, 6 ayes, 1 nay. Wow, that was hard. Thank you, everyone. We have another action item we go to. you wanna say?
I just wanted to thank the board. Again, I'm thanking the court team for the tremendous amount of work, but I do appreciate and thank the board for the time and deliberation you've put into this. it's not an easy question, and that from the administration and from the staff and from all those here, we do appreciate the vision of a long-term facilities master plan. So it gives us a direction to go to help meet our students' needs. So just wanted to make sure you hear that from us. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Nick. Just want to make it clear that all we did just now was approve a plan. We have not approved any construction. We have not approved any work yet based on this plan. So this is just our roadmap, kind of like a strategic plan for the next 10 years in terms of our facility. The one thing on the plan that we can start working on is the kindergarten center. That requires some intergovernmental agreements. So that is something that we can get going on if the board is in consensus of directing Nick to go ahead and start that work. Then we can have him start that. Do I have consensus of the board to direct Nick to start the work on the intergovernmental agreement
Yes.
necessary for the kindergarten building?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, I was gonna ask a question, but it sounds like there's consensus anyway.
But you should.
Correct me if I'm wrong, the estimate for the construction of that building does not include a cafeteria, correct?
Correct.
And the Sullivan Center does not have a cafeteria.
No, in conversations with the Park District, there are two potential solutions. One was the Park District has agreed that we could use the gym as a cafeteria space as long as we have a cover on the floor. And that's not unusual in buildings. The other is in the large group instruction area. We could, when that's created, that could be built to also be used as a cafeteria area.
Oh,
Yeah, that comes into the details later for that. But
yeah, that's
Well,
what.
yeah, but
Right,
if
right.
it's gonna
It's a-
go, you know what, we decided at the last minute, we really want an independent cafeteria. Okay, $5 million later, here's your cafeteria, like,
hey, $20 a square foot. Just kidding.
I know a guy.
But no, I really would, when we do make the intergovernmental agreement or stuff, I really do want to, because using a gym floor or a gym space for
Yes.
cafeteria, it does not seem, first of all, to move in that many tables, move out that many tables, what it does to the floor, what it does to, it just seems labor conducive and not very efficient. But those are, as Jason mentioned, the definite plans. But as Robin mentioned, if it is a dollar amount and it's going to change a lot, we need to know that.
And I'm not
Because-
saying the kids can't eat in their classroom. I'm not saying I have the solution one way or the other. I mean,
Right.
I could
But
imagine
the gym
people-
seems.
There are two large spaces available, a
Okay.
gym and large group instruction.
Well, before we can even get to construction, we need an agreement with the parties. So that's
Yeah.
the first step that pretty much
And
all.
they bring tables down in gyms for cafeterias a lot of
that
times.
gym floor is going to get
Every place,
trashed if you
everywhere.
bring tables in and out.
Again, that's outside this
Chairs,
discussion right now,
tables,
so.
that's-
Right, well, I'm just saying they
Alright.
do it all the
It-
time.
With the diagrams show 36,000 to 38,000 square feet fit in there, and what size rooms and how you design them. But it definitely would be, how and where would we eat, those types of things would be taken.
All right, the next action item is resolution for the providing for the recording the submission of a proposition of issuing bonds, which is putting the referendum question to the voters. So we've had some discussion on this. We've got in front of us some sample questions. I think since we approved the option B plan, that will be the one that we will be considering right now in terms of which question we would be putting forth on the referendum. So
Well, you selected option B.
selection option B, the dollar amount would be 42 million.
It is a question in general terms.
I had a question. On Monday, Jason had asked this question, and I don't know if I missed the answer to it or it wasn't answered. But if you could just, either one of you could just tell me. Jason had mentioned that, is there a way we could, if we go over budget, and which is always at the back of our mind from the 11.7 that we have decided to take out of our cash reserves, since we're going to pay for it all the way, is if we go over, is there a way for these bonds, could we pay part of it or remainder of it? And is there a way we should all, I know the partner, Linda, she had said we could alter it to say that we could pay for the lease payments or something to that effect. I don't exactly remember, but I know Jason had asked this question, and I don't know what the answer to that was or what we decided.
The
I can't
question
remember,
initially was
sorry.
for option A. If you did option A and you were building a building, could you put building one or more buildings? And through the conversation, at that time, I understood that the board stepped back away from that because it was too ambiguous for folks. Since you're not acquiring land to build a building and you're not building a building, this just talks about the additions, renovations, and the purchasing of the land
Okay.
of the 11 acres. To add that in, we'd have to
change the question.
we'd have to change the question,
Okay.
and you would have to change the amount.
Okay.
Because if you have that piece in the question, then some part of the money, that's where I asked, can I just put $1 in there? And,
Yeah.
So if you have that in there, then if you don't increase the amount, then you're taking a portion of that 42 million into the kindergarten building. Now you don't have that for the other things that is already in plan, already in option B. So I thought that on Monday night, I would have preferred to have that flexibility, but I think it was after it was explained that to have that flexibility, now you're adding more ambiguity and to the question, and that wasn't as desirable.
Okay.
And that was with the understanding that, from what Nick's saying, we're conservative estimates for the kindergarten building, and we sure hope we get underneath that.
Well, plus operating costs.
Plus, yeah.
Those
but
are
the-
going to
but-
be on an ongoing basis.
Yeah,
But
but the
operating
referendum question is just for renovations, construction. That has nothing to do with operating costs.
No, what I'm saying is if we wanted to possibly cover some of the operating costs of the Sullivan Center.
And then you would have to identify the question too, that you're asking for dollars for
Operating
operations.
costs, yeah, so that would change too.
Can't do that.
You can, but then you want to be upfront with folks and say, we're asking for operations.
And
Yeah, I think the prior discussion on the referendum question was just for building costs,
Right.
not
Right.
operating costs. That would be a new twist to that.
we don't want longer questions. That was what Linda said.
Be
Was
advised not to do
everybody
longer
in-
questions.
The ambiguity outweighs the ask for construction costs? Like, I know Jason had voiced that he thought it was not in our best interest to be more ambiguous on the question if we wanted to ask for construction costs. But does the board feel that? I don't know if we really had a discussion about it. Because I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like most people that will be voting, I'm hoping, will be educated when they come in to the voting polls, so the way it's, do we think phrasing it as construction costs would be a negative?
The other thing is we're trying to separate the kindergarten from the
Oh.
referendum money because we've already talked about using our
Right.
own money for that and not complicate
No, I know that we
So-
are, but like to Jeff's point about when we were discussing option A, a new building, and if we're
Yeah.
underestimating the operation costs, and what are we gonna have to give up if it's $500,000 a year going forward for
Okay, here's-
infinitum? Okay, well, same thing here. What if we're underestimating the operating costs of the Sullivan Center, and we have to do this thing going forward, or the construction?
Okay, now
I
here's my
know.
question.
Kind of the
If
basis
we added, forget the ambiguity, and this is, I want to know in the legal way. We add some amount, 3 million, 5 million, whatever we decide on it. This doesn't pass. Do we have to stall on that? Or can we still go ahead, do that? Complete it completely on our own? I mean, I don't
That's a good
know.
question.
Right.
Well, that's, go ahead, Nick.
So with the kindergarten center, the estimate right now is 11 11,750,000. I'm telling you, you have in our conversation, spend 12. So you have in your cash reserve, 250,000 additional dollars to put towards whatever, when you design it, if there's something else, if we decide a separate cafeterias as opposed to, and we want to add, so there's additional dollars in there. That's not huge in there, but in the original estimates of what you would use to put towards that is in there that I think can address whatever concerns might come up through that final design phase and what you actually want to get. If you start adding in 2 or 3 million or whatever you want to do, then your argument over the difference between the A and the B starts to shrink a little bit.
Yeah, I'd rather not add to the 42 because that's one of the criteria for me of picking B was going down from that 52. Now we keep adding to it now.
Well, I
It weight
think
has
my
much weight.
concern is more, you look at residential construction and the builder will say, oh yeah, I'll do this house for 350, and then at the end of the day, it's 450. So I
But we
know
have some
that's our
control over that.
estimated cost, but I'm just nervous, what if the cost of lumber skyrockets or whatever, and
At some
and
point,
that
we have
number
to
bumps
trust.
up.
Right.
And the bidding process is different depending on when you bid for schools. We've heard February is the best time to bid because people are lining up for their work and those types of things. So there is a bid process through this that.
So you're thinking the risk is very low, that it's gonna go over 12?
I think you're going to be 12. I think you're going to be 12. It might, depending, again, when you get in the design phase, you might come in and say, well, there's something else we think.
We have some control over how much.
You might do that. You have a little play with your bonds that you haven't refunded.
Yeah, some, but I mean, I don't want to use asbestos for insulation because we're trying to cut costs. I mean,
No,
like,
no, but I'm saying that.
I know we wouldn't do that. I'm just saying, like,
But as you're looking at, do you have more play? The architects try to do their best. I pushed Jason at times on the dollars. Are you sure? It really has, their square foot cost seems really high compared to what I asked. The Park District spent $300 a square foot for their preschool additions. If you take 36,000 square feet times $300 per square foot, you're at 10.8. We're above that significantly for estimates. Now, they built a gym, which was roughly $2 million, which we don't have to. The large group instruction room, bigger space, is a little more expensive per square foot than a classroom. But if we came in at around $300 square foot like they did, and that's the closest, most recent, very similar to 1,000 square feet, I would say I think that his estimates are reasonable, that I think will be at 12 million
okay.
and a little bit less. When we eventually go out for bids and we go for those, depending on what the market does, depending on there are a lot of things that play in that, but I think that it's a pretty reasonable estimate. $300 is what the Park District has just recently spent for their 1,000 square foot classrooms. And then the hall, well, I think you were with me when I asked $300 square foot. If I take 300 times 36,000 square feet, it's you're talking around
10 million.
11 million. I think there's play in there for us.
Okay.
Right. So is there a motion to adopt this resolution? And if there is, I'd like someone to read the resolution in its entirety, be on the record.
May I ask one thing?
Sure.
Before we go? Again, for those that would be watching out in the public or sitting and listening, I do think it would be important for us to note the board has received updated tax implications for 42,000 or 42 million. Jason's got
I
1,000.
started that.
And so I just wanted to do just a quick review because I know the board has considered this significantly through all of your debate. So I don't want to, I wanted to at least take a pause here and make sure if you're going with option B, which is your plan, and it's $42 million, the estimate for a $350,000 home annual cost is roughly $309.72 or $310 increase. That's roughly $25.81, $26 a month. For a $500,000 home, it bumps up to $449 or $450 annually with a $37 to $38 in a monthly. And for those in the 750 range, it goes up to $682.87 or $683 rounded up annually, or $57 a month increase. for the $1,000 paid in taxes, an average estimated annual impact for every 1,000 paid in taxes, not value of a home, but paid in taxes, is $29.52. So that turns out for if you have a home and you pay $10,000 in taxes, the estimated annual impact is $295.22 for every $10,000. So if you paid $20,000, you would double that. Just again, I don't have it up for presentation, but hopefully folks that are listening could follow along. By 2024, that is our last year of our current bond debt coming off, and it will drop off in 2024 this is 2017. So we're looking at 7 years in which a portion of the new referendum bond, if passed, would be added on to existing. We anticipate that the additional dollars, we would do like interest only, the additional dollars for those 7 years would roughly be an increase of about $178 for a $350,000 home. And then after 2024, when we pay off our existing current debt, in 2025, for a $350,000 home, the annual payment is $403.37 roughly on the debt there, and that is less than what we're currently paying for. So in 2025, if the referendum passes, the annual payment will be less than it has been since 2015. So and it's hard to not see that, and we will make sure that this information is posted on our webpage for folks. But I did want to just cover that what the estimates are for for a home of different values, and that there is a 7 year where there's a slight amount added on, but after that, the 8th year, it drops down.
Can I point out one thing before this gets posted to anything? I totally understand what you're saying.
Yes.
I think when a lot of people look at this, it is going to, although the bars make it look like, yes, the debt drops off in 2025, the numbers make it look like this referendum is going to cost them even more money in 2025.
Yes.
How do we fix that before this becomes?
I didn't get a chance to ask today before, but where the blue bars are, I want to put what the current payment is and then say the additional 178 and then sort of a total. So let's say it's $650 with the new referendum added on there, and then in 2025 it'll drop from 650 to 403. And I'm just using that as a dollar.
I just think that's going to be a huge portion of the education
Yes.
piece.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if people
you
don't
could-
understand,
Change the access here, and instead of debt service, this is actually the amount paid.
Right.
Then
Yeah.
you can see across exactly what you're
But
paying.
we'll get that
But
adjusted.
write the
right.
number up more exact
Right.
of, 600, 700, whatever that is, 700
Yeah,
to
just put the-
403 versus.
We'll value the blue line and show what the green line addition is for a total, and then, but I just wanted to make sure we covered that.
maybe put a written explanation right underneath it or something, just for,
Yeah, right.
some of us don't learn visually really well, you
Well,
know.
and there, if we put something online, it'd probably be a presentation thing. Here's your current debt. Here's the amount. If the referendum passes, here's the additional. Notice it's a small amount. It's interest only. Notice on the 25. So there'll be arrows, and we'd step through. We'll try to do something.
The important thing is the numbers that Nick had just talked about were averages over the 20-year life of the bond, but the actual cost to the taxpayer is back and loaded. So the addition for the first 7 years is much smaller
Right.
than
And for
the
somebody who
last.
might only be intending on living here 3 to 5 more years might matter,
Yeah,
Right.
you know, one
exactly.
way or the other, but I just don't think that graph is super clear the way it stands now.
We'll get it corrected.
Yep, that's part of the education part.
As
Okay,
long as
so
people listen.
yeah, that being said, is there a motion to approve the resolution for the referendum?
Tell me if I do it wrong.
Which resolution, do we have to read this?
Once you
one that's-
make the
yeah, that should
motion
be-
with the dollar amount, then we'll read, then Lou has volunteered to read the thing in its entirety with his low voice.
Which one?
Just that.
No,
Once the motion.
yeah, so
Okay, so
this is what once you make the motion, the motion, once made, will be to pass this resolution. So we need to read the entire resolution, so we all know, including the public, of what
I
we're
thought you meant
passing.
just the question.
No.
I'll read it.
Thanks, Lou.
We'll read it.
All right, Lou. The,
Wait,
first-
I have to make the motion though first, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
It's just the first 4 pages.
With the
is
change.
that all?
Yeah, that he has to read.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, you make the motion though.
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution providing for and requiring the submission of the proposition of issuing $42 million school building bonds to the voters of Community Consolidated School District Number 73, Lake County, Illinois, at the consolidated election to be held on the 4th day of April 2017.
I second.
Motion by Robin, second by Sonali. Lou, can you please read the,
It's 4 pages.
Yes. The only difference, Lou, is that first sentence here. Instead of Jeff Bard, the president, it'd be me, the vice president, because Jeff is not physically present. Follow that first sentence there.
Not the very top.
No, not the very top.
Right, right.
Yeah. That you don't have to read.
The meeting was called to order by the vice president on the roll being called. Jason Tron, the vice president, the following members were physically present at said location.
Jeannie Engelman.
Lugata,
Robin Cleek.
Sonali Patil.
Jeannie Engelkmeyer.
Gita Mueller.
Jason Tron?
Wait, we need Jeff.
Nope, not yet.
physically.
Oh,
The
okay.
following members were allowed by majority of the members of the Board of Education in accordance with and to the extent allowed by rules adopted by the Board of Education to attend the meeting by video or audio conference.
Jeff Bard.
Jeffrey Bard.
No member was not permitted to attend the meeting by video or audio. Following members were absent and did not participate in the meeting in any manner or to any extent whatsoever. President announced that the Board of Education would next consider the adoption of a resolution
The vice
providing.
president.
I'm sorry. The Vice President announced that the Board of Education would next consider the adoption of a resolution providing for and requiring the submission of the proposition of issuing school building bonds to the voters of the district at the consolidated election to be held on April 4th, 2000. Whereupon member
You.
Lugata presented and the secretary read by title a resolution as follows, a copy of which was provided to each member of the Board of Education prior to said meeting and to everyone in attendance at said meeting who requested a copy.
Does that mean I, as secretary, have to read that? No?
Not clear to me.
Whereas the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District Number 73, Lake County, Illinois, has considered the existing school facilities and the improvements and extensions necessary to be made thereto in order that the same will be adequately served the educational needs of the district, and whereas the school board does hereby find and determine that it is necessary and in the best interest of the district that the school board will authorize to build and equip additions to improve the sites of and alter, repair, and equip school buildings, including to provide STEM facilities and acquire and improve a site at an estimated cost of $42 million. And whereas the school board does hereby find and determine that the project is needed to provide a quality educational program, and whereas there are insufficient funds on hand and available to pay the cost of the project, and whereas before the school board can provide the project and borrow money and issue bonds for such a purpose, a proposition therefore must be submitted to the voters of the district and be approved by a majority of the voters of the district voting on the proposition and an election to be held in and for the district. And whereas it is deemed advisable, necessary, and in the best interest of the district that the proposition will be submitted to the voters of the district and an election to be held at a conducted in accordance with the general election law. Now, therefore, be it, and it is hereby resolved by the Board of Education of Community Consolidated School District Number 73, Lake County, Illinois, as follows. Section 1, Incorporation of Preambles. The school board hereby finds that all of the recitals contained in the preambles to this resolution are full, true, and correct, and does incorporate them into the resolution by this reference. Section 2, Need for Project. It is necessary and in the best interest of the district that the school board be authorized to provide the project and that it is necessary and in the best interest of the district that money be borrowed and in evidence thereof bonds of the district to be issued therefore to the amount of $42 million. Section 3, submission to voters. The proposition shall be submitted to the voters of the district in accordance with the general election law at the consolidated elections to be held on Tuesday, the 4th day of April 2017, between the hours of 6 o'clock a.m. and 7 o'clock p.m. on the said day. Section 4, voting precincts and polling places. The election shall be held in the voting precincts and at the polling places established by the county board of the county of Lake, Illinois, for voters of the district at the election. Section 5, election notice. The county clerk of the county shall give notice of the election, including the Spanish translation thereof, in accordance with the general election law by publishing the notice once, not more than 30 days, less than 10 days prior to the election, in local community newspaper having general circulation in the district, and posting a copy of the notice at least 10 days before the date of the election, and at the principal office of the county clerk. Section 6, local notice. Secretary of the school board shall post a copy of the notice at the principal office of the districts. Section 7, newspaper of general circulation. It is hereby found and determined that the Daily Herald is a local community newspaper having general circulation in the district as required by Section 12-5 of the Election Code of the State of Illinois as amended. Section 8, form of notice. Notice shall appear over the name or title of the county clerk and shall be substantially in the following form. Notice is hereby given that at the consolidated election to be held on Tuesday, the 4th day of April 2017, the following proposition will be submitted to the voters of Hawthorn Community Consolidated School District 73, Lake County, Illinois. Shall the Board of Education of Hawthorn Community Consolidated School District number 73, Lake County, Illinois, build and equip additions to improve the sites of and alter, repair, and equip school buildings, including to provide STEM facilities, acquire and approve a site, and issue bonds of the said school district to the amount of $42 million for the purpose of paying the cost thereof. The polls at the election will be open at 6 o'clock a.m. and will continue until 7 o'clock p.m. of that day. Dated this
11th day. January?
Well, why does it say March 2017?
No.
Okay.
January.
Okay,
January.
the polls of the election will open at 6 o'clock a.m. and will continue to be open until 7 o'clock p.m. of that day. Dated this 11th day of January 2017. Section 9, form of ballot. Ballot to be used at the election, including the Spanish translation thereof, shall be in substantially in the following form with such necessary alterations, changes, deletions, and insertions as may be required by Article 24A, 24B, or 24C of the Election Code, if an electronic, mechanical, or electronic voting system is used at the election.
I think he keeps reading.
You don't need to, you can just paraphrase it. This is just the following page is just the sample ballot.
You got section 10, section 11, section.
What about section 10?
Moving on to section 10. Election judges. The election shall be conducted by the election judges appointed by the county board to act in the precincts as which the proposition will be submitted to the voters of the district. Section 11. Filing of resolution. After the adoption hereof, and not less than 68 days prior to the date of the election, the secretary of the school board shall certify a copy hereof to the county clerk in order that the proposition may be submitted to the voters of the district at the election. Section 12, canvass of election. The election shall be held and conducted, and the returns thereof duly canvassed in all in the manner and time as provided by the general election law. Section 13. If any section, paragraph, clause, or provision of this resolution shall be held to be invalid or unforeseeable for any reason,
Unenforceable.
I'm sorry, unenforceable for any reason, the invalidity or unforeseeability of such section.
Unenforceability.
Too fast. Of such section, paragraph, clause, or provision shall not affect any of the remaining provisions of this resolution. Section 14, repealer and effective date. All resolutions and part of resolutions in conflict herewith be and the same are hereby repealed, and that the resolution be in full force and effect forthwith upon its adoption, adopted January 11th, 2017.
Thank you, Lou.
Thank you, Lou. So that is the resolution that is on the table. Motion to pass that resolution.
Can I just ask one quick question?
Sure, discussion on the motion.
On page
Keita.
3 and 4, it says, alter, repair, and equip school buildings include to provide STEM facilities, acquire and improve a site. We're not really acquiring a site.
Vacant
it-
land.
That's the
The vacant
11
land.
acres.
And then you could
Okay,
use the dollars if
good.
you turned them into fields or something.
Okay, never mind.
Can I ask one question?
Sure, go ahead, Jeff.
Could you read that again?
I can't guarantee, I only had a few mistakes. I think it would probably be more.
Oh,
the
Jeff, I
second
miss
time
you.
around. That was.
Do we have to do this? Member approved, somebody,
That's what we fill out after we approve the resolution, I believe, right?
oh, we have to fill it up?
No, I do.
The secretary down below here has to do all that work.
That's
So any other discussion on the resolution? So the resolution is basically putting the question to the voters for the April 7th?
Fourth.
4th, I'm sorry, April 4th
2017.
election, 2017, for the district to sell bonds in the amount of $42 million in order to build, alter, equip, so basically do everything in option A and the facility master plan that we had just.
Option
approved.
B.
For option B, I am so sorry. Thank you for agreeing, I'm just.
Oh,
option-
boy.
For option
Jason
B.
just undid months and months of.
I can't do that myself, so good thing. For option B of the facility master plan that we had just adopted and approved.
I do have a question. So, when the bonds are sold and the district pays back the bond, that payback money, does that come out of our operating budget?
No, it comes out of our debt service fund.
Okay. And then, where does it come from to get into that service fund?
We levy for it every year based on our outstanding bonds.
Okay, so do the costs change, the longer we wait to issue the bond?
Yeah, well, yeah, depending on when you issue the bonds, the interest rate at the time will dictate what our bond payments will be.
So if the interest rate, and sorry to ask you this time, but if the interest rate and the bond rate goes up over the next 3 years, 1, 2, 3 points, then the amount of money that we get is less.
No,
And
no,
what?
the dollars we ask for are the dollars we get. It's a matter of what the taxpayer would pay back in interest, what we would actually bond for at that time.
The tax levy would go
change.
up in order
So
to
if
make
it
that
costs
payment.
$60 million to borrow $42 million and it goes up to $62 million, then the payment would change and the amount we levy each year in the debt service fund would change. The dollar amount we are asking for in the referendum does not, and the dollars we would get would not change.
And so we levy the amount necessary to pay them back separate from our
Yeah.
other tax levies.
Yes. Each year, if we do this in one fell swoop and borrow the $42 million all at once, then we would dictate what the bond market would dictate what the interest rate is at that time, and then we would know what our levy is and what we would need to levy each year for principal and interest in the debt service fund.
Okay.
So the estimated impact to the taxpayer could change if interest rate changes. So depends on, so what we have is obviously just an estimate because we don't know what the interest rate is when we sell, if and when we sell the bonds.
Again, that also was created conservatively without increases in the EAV and things of that sort.
Yes.
So tried to provide the numbers as a worst-case scenario.
Okay, there's a motion on the table to adopt this resolution by Robin and seconded by Sonali. Any other discussion? All right, roll call vote, please.
Jeannie Engelmeyer,
Aye.
Sonali Patil,
Aye.
Robin Cleek, aye. Lou Gata.
Aye.
Gita Mueller.
Aye.
Jason Tron.
Aye.
Jeff Bard.
Aye.
Motion passes, 7 ayes, 0 nays. And I think that's it, unless there's a president report from Jeff. Thank
No,
you,
I
everybody.
just want to thank everybody again for the hard work. I know sometimes these decisions are difficult, but I think working together as a board and with the core team, and I want to thank Nick for his time and his leadership. I want to thank Jason for running the meeting tonight, and thanks to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. No superintendent's report?
It's slippery outside.
We just
Very,
got
very
notice that
slippery.
it's real slippery.
So as
So
you
be very
leave,
careful.
anybody's leaving, please be very cautious as you step
Great.
outside.
All right. No,
And no
any,
meeting tomorrow.
No meeting tomorrow.
no
There's
meeting tomorrow, yes, so we had one scheduled as,
That's when everybody was gonna come.
just in case. So what do we need to do to officially cancel it?
We will post notices up that the meeting has been canceled, then we'll put one out here in case somebody shows up.
Okay.
I'm not gonna wait.
No committee reports, any public announcements for anyone? Nope, we're done there. No general information, topics of future discussion.
Nick,
Only announcement is we don't have school Monday. Martin
Yes,
Luther King
right.
Day.
No, it's
Okay,
Monday.
no school Monday. I wasn't gonna show up anyways. All right, that's it. Motion to adjourn, anyone?
Nick, topics for future discussion, as in, now that this is done, and this will be done by Friday, Monday, whatever. When do we sit down to discuss, do we wait till our next meeting to discuss our plans for information provision, or?
I will be talking to Jason and asking, because I want to make sure we fall strictly within the rules and stuff, but there'll be a press release of the selection of the plan and the decision to ask for a referendum question, and there'll be some of that's just general question information that we'll put out, and then we'll follow along exactly what we need to do. I have a rough tentative skeletal calendar of certain times I think we might be looking for some meetings or some public events or options for sit and ask questions and things like that, but I need to solidify that with folks.
Okay.
But you'll be getting that via email, and then hopefully you'll have that before the next board meeting, but then at the next board meeting, we might be able to outline, here are some things if people have questions, how they can get the answers.
And this will be filed with the county clerks
Yep,
by district?
yes.
Does Robin have to go? It said secretary
All right,
to
that's
go
it.
file. Does she have to go
Oh,
file?
I don't know if Robin has to, I think.
I will verify, I think I can drop it off, but what I.
You have to sign, you
Right.
have things that you have to sign, don't you?
Yeah, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just cold.
Well, and I
I could
think
be
that-
here all night.
Wendy has it, and so I would ask maybe if you could come in the next day or two to sign it so she can print it out and make sure it's all correct.
For the right price, I can do that. $60 a semester.
65.
Oh, I got a raise.
Oh, coffee.
Inflation
All right,
raise.
motion to adjourn, anyone? Please, please.
I move that we adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Jeannie, seconded by Lou. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passed. We're adjourned. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks.
All right, have a good trip.